Chapter 1467. When Ji Wuxiang saw the hidden sword, the despair in his eyes intensified, but he did not give up. He gritted his teeth and flew to the ground, trying to get rid of the hidden sword. But the hidden sword was so powerful, how could it be so easy to get rid of it? Whoosh! The hidden sword quickly chased after him, and it was about to catch up with him. Ji Wuxiang rushed into a cloud of dust, which was exactly the same cloud of dust that was stirred up when Qiyu fell. Obviously, Ji Wuxiang was trying to use the thick cloud of dust to create an opportunity for himself to escape. The hidden sword also rushed in. Suddenly, a sharp sword aura was like a hairdryer, and in the blink of an eye, the cloud of dust was scattered and blown in all directions. The cloud of dust did not give Ji Wuxiang a chance to escape. On the contrary, he was completely exposed to the hidden sword. A huge pit appeared in front of him. The road ahead was blocked, and he had no way to escape. He let himself into a dead end, which was digging his own grave. The despair in Ji Wuxiang's heart intensified. Did God really want me, Ji Wuxiang, to die here? He was not willing. Suddenly his pupils shrank, and he saw a black dot at the bottom of the pit. It was a person. Qiyu. He immediately recognized it. It was Qiyu, who was knocked down here by Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng did not have time to pursue the victory. Qiyu was unconscious at the bottom of the pit. At this moment, he finally woke up in a daze. Qiyu's mouth was stained with blood. He was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and after the battle with Tang Zheng, he was seriously injured. Otherwise, with his cultivation, how could he be unconscious for so long? When he woke up, he immediately made up his mind to escape from this place. He must not see Tang Zheng in a short time, or his life would be in danger. After all, he did not have the means of the inner demons, and could rely on that method to survive. However, when he noticed the abnormality above his head, he immediately raised his head and saw a scene that almost made his soul leave his body. Ji Wuxiang flew towards him, and behind him was the hidden sword. Even a fool would know that this was a sign of danger. He wanted to run away, but he was so heavily injured that even flying was barely possible for him. Just as he staggered into the air, Ji Wuxiang flew above his head. When Ji Wuxiang saw Qiyu, it was as if he had seen his savior. A glimmer of hope appeared in his eyes. The turning point is here. Ji Wuxiang was secretly delighted. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Qiyu. If it was in the past, Qiyu would definitely have a way to dodge this attack. However, at this moment, the difference between him and Ji Wuxiang was like heaven and earth. There was no way for him to dodge. He felt his body tighten as he fell into Ji Wuxiang's hands. His eyes lit up as a sword light pierced towards him. He had no way of dodging and could only watch as the sword pierced his heart. Blood spurted out from his chest. The life in Qiyu's eyes quickly dissipated. He opened his mouth and said weakly, "You! So ruthless." This was not directed at Tang Zheng, but at Ji Wuxiang. He and Ji Wuxiang came to the capital to find the 100 Faces Star-Lord and kill him to relieve the hatred in his heart. It was a pity that before he could get rid of 100 Change Star-Lord, he had become a sacrificial lamb and Ji Wuxiang's shield. Tang Zheng and the hidden sword became one. When the hidden sword pierced Qiyu's body, blood dyed the hidden sword red. He only felt his eyes turn red and he was separated from the hidden sword. This was not because of the blood, but because when he saw Qiyu being stabbed by the hidden sword, he was slightly distracted. He and Qiyu had known each other for a long time and he also had Qiyu's heart in his body. So the connection between the two of them was not just a little bit. Of course, he also knew that Qiyu had always wanted to take over his body. After all, he was a celestial and the 9-yang saint body was the most important thing to Qiyu. They were both celestials and Qiyu was such a powerful figure. Since ancient times, he had always been an undisputed expert. But now that Qiyu was about to die at his hands, although he had already made up his mind, when it really came to this point, his heart was still unable to calm down. It was precisely because of this momentary distraction that his one with the sword realm was affected. He was separated from the hidden sword and appeared in the air. Looking on as the hidden sword pierced Qiyu's body, all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. His eyes constantly fluctuated. When he heard Qiyu say, "You're so ruthless," he subconsciously thought he was talking about himself. He retorted, "You've always been scheming to kill me. How am I ruthless?" It's him. Qiyu corrected him with difficulty. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that Qi Yu was talking about Ji Wuxiang. His gaze turned to look at Ji Wuxiang. Oh, where did he go? Tang Zheng was startled. He actually didn't see Ji Wuxiang. He had actually used Qi Yu as a shield to block the hidden sword's attack. Then, he took advantage of Tang Zheng's absent-mindedness to escape. Ji Wuxiang was someone like him. His ability to act according to circumstances was already ingrained in his bones. Furthermore, he was a peak expert. In a life-and-death situation, he could not afford to be distracted in the slightest. Moreover, he was good at scheming. He had calculated that by using Qi Yu as a shield, he would definitely be able to make Tang Zheng lose his focus. No matter who it was, killing a strong expert like Qi Yu would cause their mind to fluctuate violently. As a fellow expert, Ji Wuxiang could empathize with him. Therefore he had calculated this point from Tang Zheng and fled. In the huge black hole, there was only Tang Zheng and a dying Qi Yu. Tang Zheng knew that there was no point in pursuing. Ji Wuxiang would definitely use all his strength to escape. The people on the ground might not be able to stop him. He decided not to give chase. He looked at the dying Qi Yu. Qi Yu knew that his life was coming to an end. He looked weakly at Tang Zheng. His eyes seemed somewhat desolate. He said intermittently, I never thought that I would die in your hands. Yes, Qi Yu had never thought of this even in his dreams. On the trip to Heavenly Mountain, he thought that he had already killed Tang Zheng. However, in the end, Tang Zheng had secretly made a move and actually survived. A person he did not put in his eyes from the beginning had finally grown up and killed him. This could not be said to be a huge irony. Tang Zheng knew what Qi Yu was thinking. All his hatred disappeared the moment this thing pierced his heart. He said calmly, Qi Yu, when you killed me, you caused my pure yang energy to erupt. If it wasn't for Li Xiaotian risking his life to save me, I would have died long ago. Therefore when I kill you, you can only bear with it. So that's how it is. You survived like this. Qi Yu suddenly understood. Ever since he saw that Tang Zheng was still alive, he could not figure out how Tang Zheng had survived. At this moment, the answer was finally revealed. But Qi Yu changed the topic. His face suddenly turned red, as though he had regained his vitality. Even his speech became much smoother. It was like the final radiance of the setting sun. Do you think that after dodging it once, you can still dodge it next time? 20 years old will be your greatest hurdle. When that time comes, you will have a taste of the true taste of the eruption of pure yang energy. Ha ha! Suddenly, the laughter came to an abrupt end. Qi Yu's head tilted, completely devoid of life. An ambitious and ruthless person who had escaped the Battle of Zhualu tens of thousands of years ago, had now died under Tang Zheng's mysterious hidden sword. Chapter 1468. Qi Yu's final laughter was still echoing in Tang Zheng's ears. He frowned and stared at Qi Yu, who had widened his eyes but was not breathing at all. His heart was in turmoil. 8 Delta 1 Chinese Literature Network. Qi Yu's last words gave him an ominous premonition. He knew very well that when he turned 20, it would be the critical moment for his pure yang energy to explode. At that time, he thought that he should have the experience and preparation to deal with all this after experiencing the explosion of pure yang energy last time. However, Qi Yu's meaning was obvious. When he turned 20, the consequences of the explosion of pure yang energy would be more serious than he imagined. As for how serious it would be, he could not imagine it. He took a deep breath and secretly comforted himself, I'll deal with whatever comes my way. I'll definitely have a way to get through this crisis. That's not right. I'll be 20 next year, but my exact birthday is definitely not my current birthday. That's because my current birthday is the day Grandpa picked me up. My actual birthday is before that. Tang Zheng felt a chill run down his spine. He had almost overlooked such a serious problem. His current birthday was on the 5th of April, so his actual birthday would be before that. It was almost the end of the year, which meant that in a few months, it would be his 20th birthday. However, the key point was that he did not know the exact date. He had also forgotten to ask his biological parents. Furthermore, the two of them had already left without saying goodbye and disappeared without a trace. He had no way of asking them. His expression gradually turned serious. With such a serious hidden danger, if not for Qi Yu's last words reminding him, he would probably be helpless when the pure yang energy exploded. I must be careful in the next few months. He secretly warned himself to calm his fluctuating emotions. His gaze once again landed on Qiyu. His fingers gently stroked Qiyu's eyelids, causing him to close his eyes. Then he soared into the air, leaving Qiyu at the bottom of the pit. Whoosh! A sword beam shot out from his hand. Boom! The sword light hit the ground, and the dust from all directions flowed into the crater like a mudslide. In an instant, the crater was filled up, covering Qiyu. Qiyu, rest in peace here, Tang Zheng said calmly. Then, he turned his gaze and looked into the distance. The Emperor of Heaven also landed on the ground, his whole body trembling. The situation was not optimistic. The others did not notice the situation in the pit. Seeing him fly up and bury the pit with his sword, many people surrounded him. Li Xiaotian and Xiao Bai worriedly asked him how he was doing. Tang Zheng shook his head and said, Qiyu is dead, and Ji Wuxiang escaped. Xiao Bai said regretfully, Master, it's all my fault. Just now, Ji Wuxiang escaped from the pit. I didn't catch him. Tang Zheng waved his hand and said, It's not your fault. I was too careless. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. Moreover, it's Ji Wuxiang. If you really want to kill him, it won't be that easy. He had interacted with Ji Wuxiang too many times. He deeply understood how cunning Ji Wuxiang was. If he really wanted to get rid of him, it would not be an easy matter. I'll go help the Emperor of Heaven. Tang Zheng was worried about the Emperor of Heaven's safety. He turned around and rushed towards the Emperor of Heaven. However, the Emperor of Heaven suddenly let out a sharp whistle, causing his heart to tremble. He subconsciously stopped in his tracks. For some reason, there seemed to be a change in the Emperor of Heaven's body. Especially that sharp whistle. It was not the Emperor of Heaven's voice at all. It was Yan Qingyi. Tang Zheng immediately realized that there was a subtle change in the situation. Yan Qingyi was heavily injured and her divine sense was suppressed. Therefore, the Emperor of Heaven was able to take the initiative. At this moment, the Emperor of Heaven was being pressured by the inner demons step by step. He had already lost the initiative and was in imminent danger. Yan Qingyi's divine sense had recovered. In fact, there were many reasons for this. The most important one was that the Emperor of Heaven had activated the Heavenly Tao. This was equivalent to returning the favor to Yan Qingyi. The Heavenly Tao had completely awakened her. When she woke up, there were 3 souls in this body. It was truly 3 souls in one body. The inner demon saw that victory was in sight. However, a mysterious divine sense appeared. Then, it attacked his territory with an unstoppable force. Immediately, he was like a defeated general. He was quickly defeated. He was actually forced into a desperate situation by this mysterious divine sense. What's going on? What kind of divine sense is this? The inner demons cried out. They were in a panic. Inner demons, you dare to break into my body. I'll make sure you don't return. Yan Qingyi's voice rang out. Yan Qingyi had recovered. Coupled with the return favor from the Heavenly Tao, her strength had increased greatly. She was actually able to threaten the inner demons. This was something that no one had expected. The Emperor of Heaven was already at his wit's end. Suddenly seeing this turn of events, he was overjoyed. He said, Inner demons, let's see how arrogant you are now. Just now, he was extremely sullen. He had almost died at the hands of the inner demons. However, he was also somewhat resentful. He had put in so much effort, but he still couldn't resist the inner demon's attack. However, Yan Qingyi had actually succeeded. This was equivalent to defeating him. A young junior had defeated him. This was not a small blow to him. Apart from the freak Tang Zheng, Yan Qingyi's freakishness was not the slightest bit inferior to Tang Zheng. The Emperor of Heaven was deeply hurt. Humph! Ignorant people. My inner demons is not something that you can contend against. The inner demons stabilized his mind and immediately counterattacked. Spiritual attacks were the attacks that he was most proficient in. Once he madly counterattacked, his attacks could be said to be fierce. He immediately showed signs of recovering his lost territory. In front of the Heavenly Tao, this little trick is completely insignificant. It can't even withstand a single blow. Yan Qingyi said coldly. She was full of disdain. Heavenly Tao. The Heart Demon and the Celestial Emperor were shocked at the same time, stunned by these 2 words. The inner demons had just seen the Emperor of Heaven's heavenly Tao, but he had won. However, now this Yan Qingyi's heavenly Tao was clearly stronger than the Emperor of Heaven's. It was a huge threat to him. The shock in the Emperor of Heaven's heart could be imagined. He had comprehended the heavenly Tao for so many years. He thought that in this world, he was the one who understood the heavenly Tao the most. However, he suddenly realized that this was not the case. Yan Qingyi's comprehension of the heavenly Tao was far above his. How could he accept this reality? What kind of fortuitous encounter did she have in the gate of heaven? How could it cause such a drastic change in her life? Why is it that I have painstakingly comprehended the heavenly Tao for so many years, but I can't compare to her in such a short time? The Emperor of Heaven's heart was filled with sorrow. Yan Qingyi did not give the inner demons a chance. When she shouted the two words, heavenly Tao, she once again launched a fierce attack. The heavenly Tao fiercely suppressed the inner demons. After a while, the inner demons were forced into a corner. The initiative of this body fell into Yan Qingyi's hands. The inner demons retreated step by step. In the end, he had no choice but to retreat into the brain and prepare for the final counterattack. The brain was a person's central hub. Only by completely occupying the brain could one control the body. At the last moment, he could only give it his all. Humph, you think this will work? However, Yan Qingyi saw through his intentions. The inner demons could not resist the heavenly Tao's brilliant heavenly might. The Emperor of Heaven personally felt the power of the heavenly Tao that Yan Qingyi had activated. It was indeed quite different from his own. To be precise, the heavenly Tao that he had activated was not as good as Yan Qingyi's heavenly Tao. However, the Emperor of Heaven was lucky enough to have a new understanding. After all, he had comprehended the heavenly Tao for so many years. A simple opportunity could allow him to have a new understanding of the heavenly Tao. Chapter 1469. The Emperor of Heaven had a new understanding of the heavenly Tao, and it was immediately reflected. His divine sense immediately became much stronger, and he took more initiative in his body. 81 Chinese network. The inner demons and Yan Qingyi were fighting endlessly, which gave the Emperor of Heaven an opportunity to take advantage of. The inner demons turned pale with fright and cried out, Yan Qingyi, you and I will fight to the death, but you let others take advantage of you. Yan Qingyi was unmoved and replied, this is my body. Other than me, no one else can even think of touching it. Obviously, she did not put the Emperor of Heaven in her eyes, although she had already seen that the Emperor of Heaven had a new understanding of the heavenly Tao. But she had really received the true inheritance of the heavenly Tao, and it could be said that she had comprehended the true meaning of the heavenly Tao. Naturally, she was not afraid of the Emperor of Heaven. She and the Emperor of Heaven could be considered to be of the same origin. If she wanted to deal with the Emperor of Heaven, it would be easier than dealing with the inner demons. After all, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. She knew the Emperor of Heaven better. When the inner demons heard this, they really wanted to roll their eyes. They had deliberately schemed, but Yan Qingyi did not fall for it. The Emperor of Heaven was not in a hurry to attack. He had already experienced the power of Yan Qingyi, and he did not have many thoughts about this body. At this moment, when he saw Yan Qingyi's attitude, he immediately realized the seriousness of the situation. After Yan Qingyi woke up, her strength had probably increased greatly. It could be seen from the way she dealt with the inner demons. Yan Qingyi was so powerful. If he continued to stay in her body, it would be more difficult to escape in the future. He could not even rule out the possibility of being killed by Yan Qingyi. After thinking this through, the Emperor of Heaven immediately had a plan. The inner demons had restrained Yan Qingyi. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He had to take advantage of this opportunity to immediately get rid of Yan Qingyi's body and completely get rid of her restraints. For a powerhouse like the Emperor of Heaven, once he left Yan Qingyi's body, he had many ways to be reborn. At least he could survive. The Emperor of Heaven was a decisive person. After thinking about the cause and effect, and the pros and cons, he immediately began to take action. In his brain, the inner demon had already retreated to this place. Facing Yan Qingyi's pressure, he had no ability to resist at all. He hid deeper and deeper in his brain. Yan Qingyi wasn't going to let him go so easily. Taking advantage of the situation, the heart demon situation was getting worse and worse. It was truly miserable. The time has come. When the heavenly emperor saw this, He immediately activated the Heavenly Tao. Using the new mysteries of the Heavenly Tao that he had just comprehended as a guide, he miraculously escaped from Yan Qingyi's body. This was the mystery of the Way of Heaven. Although he had only comprehended a part of it, it had played an unexpected role. In addition, Yan Qingyi and the Emperor of Heaven were of the same origin, so there was no strong rejection. That was why the Emperor of Heaven was able to leave his body so smoothly. When he left the Sea of Suffering, his soul immediately floated in the air. For the Emperor of Heaven, this was a very dangerous situation. If he stayed there for too long, his soul would be damaged. After all, this was the human world. The yang energy was too strong. Without the protection of a physical body, his soul floated alone outside. It was very dangerous. The Emperor of Heaven's soul has left his body. Li Xiaotian was one step ahead of Tang Zheng and found the clue of the Emperor of Heaven. Immediately after, Tang Zheng also saw that the strand of soul had left his body and was floating in the air while trembling. As for Li Xiaotian seeing the clue faster than him, he was not surprised at all. After all, Li Xiaotian was very different from ordinary people. She was a person who could freely walk between the ghost world and the human world. She had a natural sensitivity to souls. In this point, she was even more sensitive than Tang Zheng. When the Empyrean fairy heard Li Xiaotian's words, she quickly said, "Tang Zheng, quickly think of a way to save my father." She also knew the danger of the soul being exposed outside. "Why don't I try?" Li Xiaotian asked cautiously. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, "Okay, you can help him." At this juncture, without a suitable body, the Emperor of Heaven could not possess a body to return to life. The only way was to use a special magical power to protect his soul from the erosion of the yang energy. The Empyrean fairy was surprised when Li Xiaotian volunteered. She wanted Tang Zheng to help. After all, Tang Zheng's strength was well known. Li Xiaotian was too weak, so how could she have a good idea? The Empyrean fairy was not clear about Li Xiaotian's adventure in the ghost world, so she was worried. Tang Zheng saw the Empyrean fairy's worry and quickly cast a comforting look, saying, "Don't worry, she is more suitable in this aspect than I am." The Empyrean fairy was incredulous and looked at Li Xiaotian with suspicion. She did not know why Tang Zheng said that. This was a matter of life and death, so he could not be the slightest bit careless. The Empyrean fairy understood Tang Zheng and knew that he was not a person who fooled around. He must have his reasons. She bit her lips and nodded resentfully. Li Xiaotian did not hesitate at all. He immediately cast a spell and chanted. This was a magical power that he learned from Dizong of Goguryeo. It was extensive and profound. A gust of yin energy was produced out of thin air. It was easy to imagine how difficult it was to produce this kind of yin energy in the human world where yang energy was at its peak. However, Li Xiaotian succeeded in just a few moves. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. This move was too beautiful. He was ashamed of his inferiority. If he wanted to guide the yin energy, he could only use the ghost world token to open the door between the two worlds and guide the yin energy into the human world. Li Xiaotian did not need to go through so much trouble. Her physique had become very special. There was both yang energy and yin energy in her body. Therefore, when she cast the spell, a gust of yin energy easily appeared and shrouded the soul of the Emperor of Heaven. The Emperor of Heaven originally felt very tormented, as if he was being roasted by fire. This feeling was self-evident. He was thinking of a way when he suddenly felt a chill all over his body. The feeling of being roasted by fire disappeared and was replaced by a feeling like a spring breeze, comfortable to the depths of his soul. He stared at Li Xiaotian in surprise, thinking, how did she do all this? Li Xiaotian did not finish casting the spell. She was chanting something again. Tang Zheng could tell that it was the Ksitagarbha Sutra. Dizong of Goguryeo also taught Li Xiaotian the Ksitagarbha Sutra. It was just that her understanding of the Ksitagarbha Sutra was not as good as Tang Zheng's. Although she did not have a lotus flower in her mouth, she could blurt out Sanskrit. However, when he heard these scriptures, the Emperor of Heaven felt even more comfortable. His originally restless soul calmed down a little bit. This was like a restless person being injected with a tranquilizer. The effect was amazing. Li Xiaotian waved her hand, and the Heavenly Emperor actually flew towards her as lightly as a feather. The Heavenly Emperor did not seem to have much strength to resist. This was the weakness of the soul. Although the Emperor of Heaven was very powerful, if he was only left with a wisp of soul, Then his 1,000 years of cultivation would be greatly reduced. Although it was stronger than the average soul, compared to a human with good strength, he was still at a disadvantage. Chapter 1470. Tang Zheng looked into Li Xiaotian's eyes and understood what she meant. Protect the Emperor of Heaven's soul well and help him return to life in the future. Although he didn't get along with the Emperor of Heaven, the other party was the Empyrean Fairy's father after all. Naturally, he couldn't neglect him. Li Xiaotian nodded slightly, understanding Tang Zheng's meaning. She quickly cast a spell and a golden light soared into the sky, enveloping the Emperor of Heaven's soul. Immediately, the Emperor of Heaven felt that all the yang energy was blocked outside the door, as if a barrier was firmly protecting him. He understood that this was Li Xiaotian using a special divine ability to protect his soul, so he didn't have to worry about his soul dissipating. Li Xiaotian took out a porcelain bottle and with a hook of his finger, the Emperor of Heaven's soul flew into the bottle. The Empyrean Fairy watched all of this without blinking. In the end, she let out a sigh of relief, knowing that her father was fine for the time being. She looked at Li Xiaotian with a complicated expression, not knowing how he had become so powerful. Here, take it. Li Xiaotian handed the porcelain bottle to the Empyrean Fairy. The Empyrean Fairy was slightly startled, but she immediately put it into her pocket. Thank you. She nodded heavily at Li Xiaotian and said gratefully. Li Xiaotian smiled indifferently. His gaze fell on Yan Qingyi and he asked Tang Zheng, "What do we do with her?" Tang Zheng narrowed his eyes and stared at Yan Qingyi with a burning gaze. He said meaningfully, "Yan Qingyi is no longer the same as before. Even the Emperor of Heaven had to escape from her body. The inner demons might not be able to gain any benefits." Is that so? Li Xiaotian and the Empyrean Fairy were both skeptical. Tang Zheng had obtained the Heavenly Book inheritance. He had a premonition that Yan Qingyi's gains in the Gate of Heaven would not be worse than his. That was why she had such a huge leap in strength. It was because of this that he dared to make such a claim. As if to confirm Tang Zheng's speculation, a sharp whistle came from Yan Qingyi's body. This was clearly the sound of the inner demons, and it was filled with fear and unease. The shrieking sound came to an abrupt end, as if someone had forcefully grabbed its throat. Yan Qingyi's hair and beard were fluttering in the wind. His entire body was emitting an extremely sharp aura, which was completely different from his previous indifferent aura. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed with a bright light as he stared at her without blinking. She's changed. She's really changed. He sighed in his heart. Is it over? Another question floated in his heart. Yan Qingyi's hair fell down, and her expression became indifferent again. However, everyone looked at her differently. They did not dare to judge her based on their previous knowledge. She gave Tang Zheng a deep look and walked towards him confidently. Tang Zheng understood that the battle between Yan Qingyi and the inner demons had already come to an end. The inner demons were most likely doomed. The inner demons that Qi Yu and the Emperor could not kill had fallen at the hands of Yan Qingyi? Tang Zheng was not sure. In fact, the inner demons had not completely fallen. They had only been suppressed by Yan Qingyi using the great power of the heavenly way. The inner demons were content to stay in a corner. They were curled up in a very small area in Yan Qingyi's brain. Yan Qingyi wanted to go one step further. She wanted to destroy the inner demons and completely eliminate this huge hidden danger. However, she did not have the strength. Although she had suppressed the inner demons, it was impossible for her to completely destroy them with her current strength. Yan Qingyi decided not to waste her efforts. She had comprehended the heavenly way. It was not so easy for the inner demons to jump around. The poor inner demons had run rampant for so many years, but in the end, they had been suppressed by Yan Qingyi. He was probably so angry that he was vomiting blood. Yan Qingyi stood in front of Tang Zheng. Their eyes met. Yan Qingyi spoke first. The matter has been resolved. What about the inner demons? Tang Zheng asked. He won't be able to jump around for the time being. Yan Qingyi did not mince her words. Tang Zheng understood that this sentence meant that the inner demons were not dead. He had mixed feelings and did not forget to remind her. The inner demons are cunning and powerful. You must be careful of them. Understood. Thank you for the reminder. Then what do you plan to do from now on? Tang Zheng could not see through Yan Qingyi. He might as well ask directly. Yan Qingyi smiled mysteriously and said, I've already realized the dream I've always had. Next, of course I'm going to realize my new dream. New dream? Tang Zheng raised his voice curiously. Yan Qingyi nodded. She did not explain her new dream. Instead, she pointed at the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and said, "I'll leave him to you." Tang Zheng looked at the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. He was not dead and had returned to his true form. His short stature was no different from a child's. His feelings toward the 100 Faces Star Sovereign were very complicated. After all, they had known each other for a long time and had always been enemies. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign was extremely daring. He actually killed the chief and pretended to be him. He definitely had an ulterior motive. This time, if not for the coincidence that caused his plan to fail, the impact it would have in the future would be immeasurable. It's up to you whether to kill him or not. Yan Qingyi's tone was indifferent, as if she did not care at all. Tang Zheng did not know how to deal with him at the moment. He simply waved his hand and put him into Sumeru world. Yan Qingyi turned around and left. Very quickly she walked out. An invisible force burst forth from her body. Even with so many soldiers and police around her, they couldn't stop her. They automatically parted to both sides, making a path for her. What is her dream? Li Xiaotian stared in the direction where Yan Qingyi disappeared, and could not hold back his curiosity as he asked. Tang Zheng's head moved slightly and said, "He has always been comprehending the so-called Great Tao. Perhaps she has already comprehended the Great Tao that she has always dreamed of." As he said this, he subconsciously stopped and thought of the fortuitous encounter in the Gate of Heaven. He understood the Heavenly Book and came into contact with the Heavenly Tao. But all this time, he had never had a deeper understanding of the Heavenly Tao. It was as if the Heavenly Tao was useless to him. Could it be that Yan Qingyi had truly comprehended the Heavenly Tao? He decided that when he returned, he would definitely have a good chat with the Emperor of Heaven. He then looked at the place where Qi Yu was buried and opened his palm. A storage magic treasure and war soul sword were quietly lying in his palm. This was the spoils of war that he had found on Qi Yu's body before burying him. He gently brushed past the war soul sword, and the war soul sword let out a high-pitched cry. He was extremely familiar with this sword. He had personally witnessed the war soul sword's advancement step by step, and in the end, it had become a sacred artifact. He looked at the war soul sword, then looked at the hidden profound sword, and had an idea. He had extraordinary feelings for these two swords, and since the war soul sword had returned to his hands, he naturally would not favor one and discriminate against the other. Thus he had an idea. Could he combine these two swords into one? If the two sacred artifacts were combined into one, what kind of scene would that be, and what kind of divine weapon would it refine? He could not imagine it, but he was ready to make a move. Mo Xie is still in the Sumeru world. He is a master refiner. I can ask for his opinion later. He made up his mind. His attention once again fell on the storage magic treasure. This was a heaven-grade magic treasure. Although it was not a sacred artifact, as a storage magic treasure, reaching the level of a heaven-grade magic treasure was already rare and precious. With a thought, he entered the storage magic treasure and was immediately attracted by an item. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1471. This thing firmly attracted Tang Zheng's attention, and he subconsciously cheered, "Heaven and Earth Mystic Stone." Back then, under the Tree of Life, Qi Yu took away a portion of the Heaven and Earth Mystic Stone, and the rest were all kept by Tang Zheng in Sumeru world. Now that he saw the Heaven and Earth Mystic Stone again, he had gathered 99 of them and could rebuild the stairway to heaven. In this way, not only could he open the spatial door to travel to heavens beyond, he could even bring many people with him to heavens beyond. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and moved the Heaven and Earth Mystic Stone into Sumeru world. As for the other things in the storage magic treasure, they were not ordinary items, and there were many refining magic treasures. This must be the preparation work of Qi Yu to equip his team in the future. However, now that Tang Zheng had taken advantage of him, how could he not take it? After cleaning up the spoils of war, Tang Zheng looked around and found that many military police had gathered in the distance. This time, the movement was too big, and the whole world knew about it. It was impossible for the officials to hide the existence of the cultivators. This world was probably going to change. However, this was not the problem he was worried about. As for the death of the leader, he was not worried. The officials' ability to deal with the aftermath was already perfect, and there must be a way to deal with it. After this battle, the officials would completely stop and would not target him. The next leader would even try his best to rope him in. "Let's go!" Tang Zhang called out and summoned the somersault cloud. The few of them rode the cloud and flew away from everyone's heads. The others watched them ride the cloud and fly away, and no one stopped them. Not long after, Tang Zhang pressed the cloud and landed outside his villa. The witch tribesmen immediately surrounded him. They did not know that Tang Zhang had faked his death, so when they suddenly saw the great envoy, they were all shocked. Tang Zhang comforted them and explained a few words. The witch tribesmen cheered and understood the good intentions of the great envoy. They were all greatly encouraged and were overjoyed as if it was the new year. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a few air-piercing sounds came from afar, causing their nerves to tighten, and they all turned their heads to look. When they saw clearly, they heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. It turned out to be Tian Chanzi and the others who had flown back from afar. Previously, when the great battle began, they had quietly lurked not far away from the inner courtyard and witnessed the great battle from afar. This battle was very intense, but it didn't last long. Before they could react, the battle was already over. Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Zhang with a complicated expression. He punched him in the chest and said emotionally, "You brat, you really want to scare people to death by making such a big scene." For someone of Tian Chanzi's experience to say such words, it was obvious that the shock of this battle was too great for him. Tang Zhang smiled bitterly. "I had no choice. If Qi Yu and Ji Wuxiang hadn't come to Beijing, I wouldn't have thought that things would end up like this." "What happened to those two?" Tian Chanzi asked curiously. Tang Zheng's face sank and he said in a dignified tone, "Qi Yu died and Ji Wuxiang escaped. Now, our biggest enemy is Ji Wuxiang." Ji Wuxiang. Tian Chanzi's tone became heavier as he repeated this name. His two eyebrows seemed to knit together. He really is a difficult guy to deal with. It had to be said that even with Tian Chanzi's insight, he still misjudged Ji Wuxiang. He didn't expect that Ji Wuxiang would come to this point. "What about that girl from the Yan family?" Tian Chanzi hesitated for a moment before asking another key question. He had seen Yan Qingyi's valiant and heroic appearance from afar, so he asked this question. "She." Tang Zhang hesitated for a moment. "I can't say for now, but I believe there will be a result soon." Tang Zhang believed that after asking about the soul of the Emperor of Heaven, he would definitely gain something. Tian Chanzi looked at him deeply and didn't continue asking. At this time, the people in the villa all came out. Feng Shishir, Yi Dingdang, Lu Qingmei, Mu Hongyan, Wu and the others all stood at the door. Their eyes were red as they stared at him. They didn't even try to hide the deep feelings in their eyes. The battle this time was too intense. Their hearts were in their throats. Now that they saw Tang Zhang return safe and sound, how could they control their emotions? They didn't care about being shy. In front of their beloved, the shyness in their hearts couldn't withstand a single blow. They were completely defeated by their true feelings. "Tang Zheng!" Feng Shishir cried out. Like a gust of wind, she directly threw herself into Tang Zheng's embrace. In the blink of an eye, the other women also made their move. They were as quiet as a virgin, but as agile as a fleeing rabbit. Bang bang bang. Tang Zheng felt like he was being hit by a huge rock. He was completely overwhelmed by the few people. After experiencing the battle just now, he didn't have the slightest bit of stage fright. But when he saw the battle in front of him, his heart panicked. He staggered and actually fell to the ground. "Ah!" A few delicate cries sounded out. The few of them pressed Tang Zhang under their bodies. Then, they suddenly woke up and looked at each other in dismay. They were incomparably embarrassed. Although they were gradually aware of each other's relationship, they didn't expect to completely expose each other's relationship. Especially Mu Hongyan, who had always had an underground relationship with Tang Zhang. Now, wouldn't it be completely exposed? Mu Hongyan wished that she could find a hole to hide in, but when she recalled the soul-stirring battle just now, she wished that she could lean on Tang Zheng's side for a while longer. Seeing that, Tian Chanzi and the Shaman clan members all revealed meaningful smiles. The Shaman clan members all turned around, not wanting to see anything indecent. Tang Zhang was pressed down by the soft body. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said resentfully, "Can we get up first?" Only then did the few women stand up. They all glared at him, as if to say that it was all his fault. Tang Zhang wanted to cry, but no tears came out. I didn't do anything. How could this have anything to do with me? Tang Zheng stood up, patted his clothes and said guiltily, "Everyone is too enthusiastic, I'm flattered." Everyone returned to the villa and sat down. The few women secretly looked at each other from time to time, their eyes revealing a thought-provoking look. For a moment, the atmosphere in the living room was somewhat awkward. Tang Zheng coughed and broke the silence with a thick face. He said, "Let me first introduce what happened today." He explained the course of the battle in a concise and comprehensive manner. Immediately, everyone was firmly attracted by this content and forgot the awkwardness just now. When Tang Zheng finished, there was silence. No one spoke. They were completely immersed in the battle. Tang Zheng glanced around and also remained silent, giving them time to react and reflect. After a while, Tian Chanzi said, "Then our top priority is to find Ji Wuxiang. Don't give him a chance to make a comeback." Tang Zheng nodded and said in a deep voice, "Dianan is his nest. The last time I made a big scene in Dianan, it had a big impact on them. Now that Ji Wuxiang has been defeated, it is still unknown whether he will return to Dianan. Whether he returns to Dianan or not, we must go to Dianan." Tian Chanzi insisted. Tang Zheng looked at him deeply and said, "I agree. If he does not return to Dianan, then we must destroy his power in Dianan." In addition, what about Yan Qingyi? Li Xiaotian had seen Yan Qingyi's power with his own eyes, so he directly asked this question. Tang Zheng fell into silence. After a while he said, "After I ask the Emperor of Heaven, I will go to the Yan family." Everyone understood that the top priority was to ask the Emperor of Heaven. In addition, Tang Zheng had one more thing to do, and that was to integrate the two divine weapons, and then go to Dianan. Dianan was Ji Wuxiang's nest. It was deeply rooted, and he had set up the celestial chess. The celestial chess in Dianan was not like the one in the capital. It was a fully matured celestial chess, not an incomplete version. Its power could not be mentioned in the same breath. Tang Zheng also did not have absolute confidence that he could defeat Ji Wuxiang, who had the celestial chess. Therefore, he must be fully prepared, and a divine weapon was one of the preparations. In addition, he gained a lot from this battle. Not only did he comprehend a new sword move, but his power was also restless, and there seemed to be signs of a breakthrough. Especially the new move of man and sword as one, it seemed to have opened the door to a new world for him. It turned out that he could also comprehend such a shocking move, which gave him great encouragement and confidence. He was ready to continue and create a set of sword moves, which would be even more powerful. Of course, he would not give up on the Taiji two-form swordsmanship. He had not completely understood this set of sword moves, and there were still many essences in it. If he completely understood it, it would be beneficial for him to create new moves. Time was of the essence, and Tang Zheng did not have time to waste. Therefore, he signaled to the Empyrean fairy. She understood and took out a small porcelain bottle. Li Xiaotian hooked his finger, and the small porcelain bottle flew up and floated in the air. "Come out!" Tang Zheng shouted. Li Xiaotian cast a spell, and a wisp of yin qi floated out of the porcelain bottle. The souls of heaven and earth also flew out of the bottle along with the yin qi. Ordinary souls could not be seen with the naked eye, but the Emperor of Heaven was different. His soul was extremely strong, and with the support of Li Xiaotian's special mana, everyone could see him with the naked eye. Many people saw this for the first time, and they all stared with wide eyes, unable to hide their curiosity. "So this is a soul." Yi Dingdang clicked her tongue in wonder. "Can my soul be like this too?" Tang Zheng gave her a bitter smile and said, "Your soul is not as strong as the Emperor of Heaven's. If you want to do this, I'm afraid your soul will scatter." Yi Dingdang shrunk her neck and quickly waved her hand. "Then forget it, I don't want to do this." Yi Dingdong's focus was on the soul, while Wu and Feng Shishir looked at Li Xiaotian at the same time. The two of them had high cultivations, and their minds were relatively meticulous, so they immediately saw through Li Xiaotian's problem. For her to be able to do this, it was enough to show that her strength was unfathomable. This was equivalent to giving them a huge pressure. Emperor of Heaven looked around, and it was also the first time he saw Tang Zheng's huge camp. The experienced and knowledgeable Emperor of Heaven immediately saw through the unusual relationship between Tang Zheng and the few women, and said straightforwardly, "No wonder you rejected my daughter's engagement. So it turns out that you were hiding a mistress in a golden house, and have so many close female friends. Emperor of Heaven's words were shocking, and directly pointed out the relationship between Tang Zhang and the girls, causing the atmosphere to become subtle. Many people who did not go to the gate of heaven and did not know the inside story subconsciously looked at the Empyrean fairy, and exclaimed in their hearts, "What, the Emperor of Heaven actually wants to matchmake Tang Zhang and the Empyrean fairy? No, absolutely not." To read a novel without mistakes, please visit Chapter 1472. The girls could tolerate each other, but if the Empyrean fairy also joined in, then they would be greatly threatened. After all, the Empyrean fairy's strength was too great and could be of great help to Tang Zhang. If the two of them were to walk together, then what would they do? Thus, they all stared at the Empyrean fairy with burning gazes, and their gazes became thought-provoking. Facing the Emperor of Heaven's teasing, Tang Zhang deliberately pretended not to hear and changed the topic, saying, "Emperor of Heaven, regarding Yan Qingyi, I have a few questions to ask you." Hearing the three words Yan Qingyi, the Emperor of Heaven's attention was indeed attracted. He stared straight at Tang Zhang and asked in a deep voice, "What questions do you have? How did Yan Qingyi become so powerful? Is it related to the heavenly Tao?" Tang Zhang went straight to the point. The Emperor of Heaven pondered for a moment and said, "Your eyesight is not bad, to actually see so many clues." Tang Zhang's head moved and asked, "Then it seems that I was right?" The Emperor of Heaven said bluntly, "Yes, you guessed right. Everything that she has today is related to the heavenly Tao. Now that I think about it carefully, her fortuitous encounters in the gate of heaven surpassed yours, which is why she has today's achievements." "Why?" Tang Zhang asked doubtfully. "Didn't she and I both inherit Fuxi's Tao intent?" In the gate of heaven, Tang Zhang and Yan Qingyi both received Tao intent inheritances from Fuxi's statue. But this Tao intent did not have much use for Tang Zhang. Obviously, Yan Qingyi was different. The Emperor of Heaven said bluntly, "Ancestor Fuxi's Tao will also came from comprehending the heavenly Tao. The Tao will pass down by the ancestor is more of a medium that allows you to use the heavenly book to comprehend the heavenly Tao. Only the heavenly Tao that you comprehend yourself is the most useful to you." Tang Zhang was enlightened. So that was the case. But the Emperor of Heaven changed the topic. The Tao insight that Yan Qingyi inherited seems to be completely different. She seems to have directly obtained the heavenly Tao, and not the Tao insight of her ancestors. "What?" Tang Zhang exclaimed and stood up immediately. His heart was in turmoil. How could he not be surprised? Fuxi's Tao insight was worlds apart from the heaven's Tao insight. He had personally experienced it, so he was very clear about the gap between the two. If someone else said this, he would definitely scoff at it and think it was nonsense. But this was said by the Emperor of Heaven, so he couldn't doubt it. After all, the Emperor of Heaven had comprehended the heavenly Tao for over 1,000 years, and he understood the heavenly Tao far better than Tang Zhang. These words weren't spoken without reason, and there was real evidence. Even though the others knew nothing about the heavenly Tao, they realized the seriousness of the problem, and they all revealed astonished expressions as they looked at the Emperor of Heaven with dumbstruck expressions. The Emperor of Heaven looked around and took in the reaction of everyone, and he sighed faintly. "Even though I don't want to admit it, but the truth is like this. Yan Qingyi has inherited the true heavenly Tao." The emotions in his words were self-evident. He'd comprehended the heavenly Tao all his life, and he was the successor of the Fuxi clan, but he never imagined that the heavenly Tao would choose an outsider. He had comprehended the heavenly Tao for a long time, and he already understood that the heavenly Tao had its own consciousness and thoughts. The heavenly Tao had chosen Yan Qingyi and not him, so the blow to him was self-evident. Tang Zhang fell into silence. Yan Qingyi had inherited the heavenly Tao, so her attitude towards him had undergone a tremendous change. He didn't know if Yan Qingyi would view him as an enemy, causing both sides to become enemies. He took a deep breath and comforted himself that his worries were groundless. If Yan Qingyi had really become enemies, then perhaps both sides would already be in a life-and-death situation, and wouldn't be at peace like this. But the heavenly Tao's choice was still something he couldn't understand. He stared straight at the Emperor of Heaven and asked curiously, "Then do you know why the heavenly Tao chose Yan Qingyi?" The Emperor of Heaven rolled his eyes at him and said, "I also want to know." Tang Zhang was helpless and resentfully said, "Then it seems that I really need to pay a visit to Yan Qingyi and find out her actual situation." The Yan family and Tang Zhang's relationship was not shallow. Both sides had helped each other and walked together for such a long time, so Tang Jing really didn't want to have animosity with the Yan family and become enemies. When the time comes, it's best if you bring me along. I also want to meet her. The Emperor of Heaven volunteered. Tang Zhang nodded and remembered it in his heart. Since he couldn't figure out Yan Qingyi's actual situation, then he had to be fully prepared when he went to see her. He couldn't just go rashly. I must immediately fuse with those two divine swords. Tang Zheng secretly clenched his teeth. The most important thing right now was to increase his fighting strength as much as possible. As night fell, the lights in the villa were extinguished. Everyone returned to their own rooms to rest. Because Tang Zheng's relationship with the girls was exposed, he was left with nothing to do. No one dared to sneak into Tang Zheng's room under the watchful eyes of others. If they were seen by others, then it wouldn't be good. After all, there were several pairs of eyes staring at Tang Zheng's room. Even the slightest movement of grass in the wind couldn't escape these pairs of fiery eyes. What, you want to fuse with the two divine swords? Mocie's cry of surprise exploded in Tang Zheng's ears like a clap of thunder. It was as if he was even more shocked than when he heard the news of Qi Yu's death. He didn't think that Mocie's attitude would be so big. He asked in astonishment, "What's wrong with that?" Mocie said without hesitation, "Of course not. You're really indulging in fantasy. You don't know how big of a risk this is. You've already obtained all the refining methods from me, so you should know that refining isn't just a matter of adding two magical treasures together. This isn't a matter of 1 + 1 = 2. Refining is a complex and profound study. How can you take it for granted?" Mocie's speech didn't dispel Tang Zheng's thoughts. He hesitated slightly before continuing, "There's nothing absolute in this world. If you don't try, how do you know it won't work?" Mocie coldly snorted and said, "This kind of thing can be known just by thinking about it. What's the use of trying? If by any chance you destroy the two divine tools, wouldn't that be a waste of heaven's gifts?" Tang Zheng had deep feelings for the two swords. He wanted to have them both, so fusing them together was the best choice. He persisted in his view and firmly said, "No matter if it succeeds or not, I still want to try." "I won't go crazy with you." Mocie refused without hesitation. Tang Zheng understood that Mocie couldn't provide him with any experience or good advice. This was because this was beyond his ability and even beyond his knowledge. He could only rely on himself to explore. What Tang Zheng was least afraid of was fumbling around. After all, he had spent most of his time fumbling around. Mocie looked deeply at Tang Zheng a few times. He couldn't calm his emotions and couldn't help but think of what Tang Zheng said about Qi Yu's death. He felt as if he had lost something. He, or perhaps everyone in the Yellow Emperor tribe, had fought with Qi Yu for so long. At first, they all thought that Qi Yu was dead, but he came back to life. Mocie was deeply aware of how cunning and tenacious Qi Yu was. When he heard the news of his death, he felt that it was especially unreal. He carefully thought about it for a while. In the end, he couldn't hold back the question in his heart and asked %3A, "Are you sure that Qi Yu is dead?" "I saw it with my own eyes. How could it be fake?" Tang Zheng asked back. "Even if you saw it with your own eyes, it might not be all true," Mocie retorted. Hearing his doubts, Tang Zheng rolled his eyes speechlessly and said, "It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. Anyway, I'm just telling you." Mocie was suddenly startled. He muttered as if in a dream, "Could it be that he's really dead?" An enemy who had always been there suddenly died. This was really hard to accept immediately. Tang Zheng simply ignored him. He took out the War Spirit Sword and the Hidden Profound Sword. As if sensing his mood, the two swords let out a buzzing sword sound. His fingers gently brushed the sword body. The sword sound became even more resounding and hurried. It seemed to be cheering and impatient. "Master, I will lend you a hand." The Hidden Profound Sword Spirit volunteered. Tang Zheng smiled knowingly. "All right, then let's try it out together. If anything happens to you later, immediately inform me." He waved his hand and the 9 revolving pill furnace appeared out of thin air, floating half a meter away from him. The 9 revolving pill furnace had already been upgraded to a sacred weapon. However, its weapon spirit was hidden in the spirit on the walls of the furnace. "True fire!" Tang Zheng shouted in a low voice. A ball of true fire emerged from his fingertips and flew into the 9 revolving pill furnace, burning fiercely. Whoosh! The war spirit sword flew into the 9 revolving pill furnace. Although the furnace was small, there was a universe inside. It could completely contain the war spirit sword. The true fire moved upon hearing the sound and immediately enveloped the war spirit sword. The sword body immediately shone with the light of the true fire, appearing somewhat mysterious. Although the true fire was powerful, the war spirit sword was a sacred weapon. It could not be refined with just a little true fire. This required Tang Zheng to use his refining divine ability in order to refine the war spirit sword with the true fire. He immediately activated the refining divine ability that Wuxia had taught him. With a whoosh, the flame soared and completely occupied the interior of the 9 revolving pill furnace. Wang Wang! The war spirit sword seemed to have sensed something and immediately began to tremble. The sword body slowly turned red. Once the sword body turned red, it would soften little by little and the impurities within it would be stripped away. Although the war spirit sword was a sacred weapon, it would still have impurities. It was just that the amount was very small. In the past, Tang Zheng's refining divine ability was not very profound, so he had no way to refine the war spirit sword. However, it was different now. If he wanted to fuse the 2 divine swords, he would need to extract the essence of the 2 swords. Only then would he be able to refine an even more powerful divine weapon. The war spirit sword softened and the sword body turned into flowing water. It actually melted into a ball. Traces of impurities were like gas, evaporating from the ball and being sucked out of the furnace. The ball became smaller and smaller, but the essence it contained became denser and denser. Just by looking at it, one could see the difference. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. This could be considered as a success for the first step. He activated his divine ability and decided to take the next step. Just at this moment, a hole opened in the ball and something floated out. Chapter 1473. The 2 of them were attracted by the thing that came out of the small ball as they stared at it. This is... Tang Zheng hesitated for a moment before shouting out, "This is a strand of soul." "It's a soul," Wuxia said with certainty. With their eyes, they naturally wouldn't mistake the soul. Could it be a sword spirit? Tang Zheng asked the question in his heart. Wuxia's eyes flickered as if he was deep in thought. After a while he said, "I have never seen a sword spirit before, so I cannot say for sure." Although Wuxia had refined a saint artifact before, and the saint artifact had an artifact spirit, he had never separated the artifact spirit from the saint artifact before. Therefore, he was unable to determine whether this strand of soul was the battle soul sword's artifact spirit and sword soul. "Then what should I do?" Tang Zheng asked, not knowing what to do. Wuxia rolled his eyes and spread out his hands, saying, "You're asking me, but who should I ask? I'm afraid that since ancient times, no one has been as reckless as you and was willing to merge 2 saint weapons into one. So, I can't give you an answer to your question. You decide for yourself." Hearing Wuxia's words, Tang Zheng could only smile bitterly. He had already expected to encounter a problem, but he didn't expect it to be this problem. Since there was no ready answer, he would have to figure it out himself. Man proposes, but God disposes. He took a deep breath and stared at the strand of soul, saying, "Sword spirit, when you merged with the battle soul, there must be a part of the battle soul's soul in here. Since we are old acquaintances, I, Tang Zheng, will give it a try today." He carefully circulated his energy as he tried to guide the sword spirit. However, just as his chi was about to touch the sword spirit seemed to have been stimulated and immediately became restless. It rushed left and right as if it wanted to rush out of the 9 revolving pill furnace. "Be careful," Wuxia hurriedly warned. Tang Zheng's heart trembled as he naturally wouldn't let the sword spirit succeed. He immediately circulated his energy to seal the opening of the furnace. The sword spirit hit the seal and bounced back. The sword soul didn't give up. Instead, it became abnormally restless, as if it had gone mad. It fiercely attacked the seal over and over again, tirelessly. "Don't let it continue like this. It will damage the sword spirit." Wuxia clenched his fists as if he was the one refining the weapon. He was extremely nervous. Tang Zheng nodded heavily. "I understand." However, there was nothing he could do. The sword spirit was a wisp of a soul, and he couldn't completely confine it. He was deeply afraid that if he hurt it, it would affect the subsequent refining process. But letting him continue like this wasn't a solution either. The sword soul is a soul, so how can we deal with it? He racked his brains and racked his brains. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. The Xittagaba Sutra is a sharp weapon against souls. In the ghost realm, so many ghosts have been purified by the Xittagaba Sutra. Can the Xittagaba Sutra also purify sword souls? When he thought of this, he immediately chanted the Xittagaba Sutra. Golden Sanskrit words flew out of his mouth and flew towards the sword spirit. No one knew that there was a different world within the sword spirit. The hidden mysteries were simply difficult to detect with the naked eye. In addition to the sword spirit, another wisp of soul was struggling with all its might. It was extremely anxious. Has Tang Zheng lost his mind? He is actually willing to destroy a sacred weapon to refine a more powerful magic weapon. This is really a fantasy. This was Qi Yu's voice, but no one heard the soul's silent criticism. No one would have thought that Qi Yu, a crafty rabbit with 3 burrows, did not completely disappear. Instead, at the last moment, he secretly put the last wisp of his soul into his magic weapon, the War Soul Sword. Qi Yu's soul was hidden in the sword spirit. The sword spirit was his best disguise, and no one would discover it. After all, in almost everyone's eyes, Qi Yu was already dead. Tens of thousands of years ago, during the Battle of Zhuelu, he was able to leave his life behind under the eyes of the Yellow Emperor and escape without a trace. Not to mention, it was even easier for him to leave a wisp of his soul under the eyes of Tang Zheng. If Tang Zheng knew about this, he would definitely be dumbfounded. After all, he had personally witnessed Qi Yu's death, but Qi Yu had still deceived everyone. After Qi Yu discovered that the War Soul Sword had been destroyed, he knew that he could not continue hiding. He had to take advantage of the fact that Tang Zheng and Mo Xie had not discovered him and escape. Otherwise, with his current soul form, many people could easily kill him. In addition, seeing Mo Xie and Tang Zheng together, Qi Yu was also furious. It turned out that the two of them had actually hooked up with each other. It was truly beyond his expectations. Qi Yu wanted to escape, but when he saw the golden Sanskrit words one after another, he was immediately shocked. Xittagaba Sutra. He knew how powerful the Xittagaba Sutra was, and he also knew that the Xittagaba Sutra was the key to restraining souls. He was only a wisp of soul. How could he contend against the Xittagaba Sutra? He really wanted to immediately appear and stop Tang Zheng's reckless actions. But if he appeared, his plan to fake his death would fail, and all his efforts would be wasted. He absolutely could not allow this to happen. He could only clench his teeth and think to himself, "I'll go all out at this time. I only have a sliver of hope. I hope that the Xittagaba Sutra is not too powerful, and I can luckily escape this calamity." Qi Yu felt lucky and decided to give it a try, leaving it up to fate. Tang Zheng was completely unaware that Qi Yu was still in this wisp of soul. He only hoped that he could use the Xittagaba Sutra to purify the sword soul, thus pacifying the sword soul and allowing it to become one with the mysterious hidden sword. The Sanskrit words wrapped around the sword soul, and the sword soul's restless emotions immediately calmed down. It no longer dashed left and right, but instead trembled non-stop in the 9 revolving Dan furnace, as if it was resisting the Xittagaba Sutra. The sword soul was not immediately subdued by the Xittagaba Sutra, but Tang Zheng immediately increased his strength. The Sanskrit Vajra shone and turned into a golden kasaya that covered the sword soul. This golden kasaya was very small, but its power was not ordinary. The sword soul's attack immediately weakened, as if it was suppressed by the golden kasaya. Qi Yu was suffering. He really wanted to shout and complain about Tang Zheng's actions, but he could only silently curse. "Tang Zheng, how is your Xittagaba Sutra so powerful? Damn it, this is all Dizong of Goguryu's fault. Why did he impart the Xittagaba Sutra to this brat? Now I've suffered so much." The Xittagaba Sutra's power grew stronger and stronger. Qi Yu was only a remnant soul, his strength was not strong, so he had no way to resist the Xittagaba Sutra. His consciousness became fuzzy. "No, I can't be converted by the Xittagaba Sutra. This brat wants to turn me into his sword soul. How can I let him do as he wishes?" Qi Yu was extremely unwilling, but he did not have the slightest ability to resist. He was like a leaf floating in the sea, unable to resist. Seeing that the Xittagaba Sutra was effective, Tang Zheng let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had the Ksitigarbha Sutra's help, otherwise he would not have been able to suppress the sword's soul, and then the two swords would not have been able to fuse successfully. Mo Xie stared at this scene without blinking, as Tang Zheng's every move did not escape his eyes. Witnessing his success, the shock in Mo Xie's heart could be imagined, and he was speechless for a long time. Tang Zheng did not delay. With a thought, the hidden profound sword also entered the 9 revolving Dan furnace, preparing to fuse the two swords. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1474. After the hidden profound sword was thrown into the 9 revolving pill furnace, the true fire did not immediately wrap around it. Instead, a figure flashed at the door and Li Xiaotian appeared in the room. Previously, Tang Zheng was worried that an accident would occur during the smelting of the battle soul sword, so he purposely let Li Xiaotian wait outside the room. Now that there was no danger, it was time for her to use her skills. The hidden profound sword was made of 9 nether mysterious iron, so it had to be refined with ghost fire. Now that he wanted to refine the hidden profound sword again, he also needed ghost fire. Only Li Xiaotian could ignite the ghost fire, so naturally, he would need her help. Li Xiaotian had been waiting outside the door worriedly. After hearing Tang Zheng's call, she was overjoyed and knew that it was time for her to go on stage. Ever since she knew that Tang Zheng needed her ghost fire, she had been silently practicing controlling it. Now, her control of the ghost fire had reached perfection. She crossed her hands and a ball of blue ghost fire rose from her palm and flew into the 9 revolving pill furnace. Once the ghost fire arrived, the temperature in the furnace dropped by many degrees. Although the ghost fire was still fire, it was extremely cold and was very different from ordinary flames. Even if it was extremely cold, once the ghost fire touched the body, it could still burn the body. The taste was not any better than other flames. Tang Zheng and Mo Xie had seen the power of the ghost fire, so they immediately stared at Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian tightly guarded her mind. All of her thoughts were focused on the ghost fire and the hidden profound sword. The ghost fire wrapped around the hidden profound sword, but it did not resist. This was because the hidden profound sword and the battle soul sword were very different. The hidden profound sword was Tang Zheng's sword and was connected to his mind. The battle soul sword belonged to Qi Yu, so even if it became an ownerless item, it still had Qi Yu's imprint. Therefore, it naturally resisted external threats. The hidden profound sword was very compatible with Li Xiaotian. Not long later, it melted into a ball of essence, without the slightest shadow of a sword. However, what surprised Tang Zheng was that there was no soul that flew out of the hidden profound sword. Didn't the hidden profound sword also have a sword spirit? Why didn't the soul fly out? Tang Zheng and Mo Xie both opened their eyes wide, looking at this completely different scene. Looking at the hidden profound sword on the left and the war soul on the right, the two were indeed worlds apart. Tang Zheng was stunned and stammered. What's going on? The sword spirit of the hidden mystic sword had already understood Tang Zheng's astonishment and hurriedly said, Master, I am one with the sword spirit of the hidden mystic sword. I cannot be separated from it at all. Then why did the war soul sword spirit separate? Tang Zheng asked subconsciously. The hidden sword hesitated for a moment and said, I don't know either. The gazes of the three involuntarily focused on the war soul sword. That ball of soul was especially eye-catching. If not for the Ksitigarbha Sutra suppressing it, it would have already slipped away. They didn't know that this was because of Qi Yu. The war soul sword spirit was mixed with a strand of Qi Yu's soul, which was why it could separate from the war soul sword's essence. A true sword spirit, or rather an artifact spirit, even if the saint artifact melted, the artifact spirit would still be wrapped within it, just like the hidden profound sword. Unless the sword spirit was mixed with another strong soul, the artifact spirit would be able to separate from the saint artifact. This kind of thing was unprecedented. They didn't have any reference, so they naturally couldn't guess the reason behind it. They could only stare. Tang Zheng took a deep breath, knowing that he couldn't delay at this juncture. The strangeness of the war soul sword could only be explored bit by bit in the future. We will begin the fusion immediately. Be careful. If there are any abnormalities, tell me immediately. Tang Zheng warned Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian nodded his head heavily. He secretly swore in his heart that he definitely couldn't drag Tang Zheng down. No matter what, he had to ensure that this fusion was successful. As a weapon refining master, Mo Xie had never seen such a scene before, so he opened his eyes wide and admired this once-in-a-lifetime scene. He didn't even dare to blink, afraid that he would miss any details. Fuse! Tang Zheng roared, and the essence of the two swords, under the control of the two of them, slowly moved closer to each other. One yin and one yang. The two flames also moved closer to each other. Puff! When the two flames came into contact with each other, they were actually annihilated, as if they had never appeared before. The few of them were shocked. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed through Tang Zheng's mind, as if a large door was slowly opening in front of him. Extreme yin gives birth to yin. Extreme yin gives birth to yang. Yin and yang counter each other, annihilate each other. Yin and yang give birth to each other, forming the Great Tao. This obscure and profound text was a passage in the Heavenly Book, and Tang Zheng remembered it very clearly. He didn't expect that it would jump out by itself, and it really gave him a shock. However, he immediately realized the profound meaning contained in this passage. He stared straight at the ghost fire and true fire that were annihilating each other, and suddenly understood. So that's how it is. The ghost fire and true fire, one yin and one yang, were supposed to counter each other. When the two came into contact, they would naturally annihilate each other. However, the Heavenly Book said that yin and yang could not only counter each other, they could also give birth to each other. This was the Great Tao. Yin and yang give birth to each other, forming the Great Tao. Tang Zheng muttered these words silently, his eyes staring at the annihilating flames. His eyes flashed, and he suddenly understood. Without any movement from him, the true fire and ghost fire changed. They met each other, but this time they didn't annihilate each other. Instead, they suddenly soared up and turned into a new ball of flame. There was purple and blue in this ball of flame, and they blended together. There was me and you and me and you and me. It was exceptionally dazzling. What kind of flame is this? Wuxia exclaimed. He was a master weapon refiner, and had a deep understanding of flames, but he had never seen such a flame before. In particular, the energy contained in it was definitely not just the superposition of the true fire and ghost fire. It was clearly more powerful than the superposition of these two flames. Li Xiaotian also opened his eyes wide. He was one of the people involved, so he had a deeper understanding. As for the ghost fire in the new ball of flame, she could no longer control it. She immediately realized that this was a new kind of flame. Without a doubt, all these changes were made by Tang Zheng, and it was definitely a good change. She looked at Tang Zheng in high spirits. The man she loved was indeed different from the rest, and he had actually created such a miracle. Tang Zheng felt it the most. He realized that this was the change caused by the Great Tao mentioned in the Heavenly Book. The Great Tao mentioned in the Heavenly Book was also the Heavenly Tao. No wonder Yan Qingyi's strength improved by leaps and bounds. The Heavenly Tao was indeed extraordinary. The Heavenly Tao changed the flame and gave birth to this new kind of flame. He was very clear that this new kind of flame was more powerful and useful for weapon refinement. Moreover, it merged the attributes of the true fire and ghost fire. Therefore, in the future, there would definitely not be any problems when using this kind of flame to refine the 9 underworld mysterious iron. There was no need to trouble Yan Qingyi anymore. Since it's a flame transformed by the Heavenly Tao, then let's call it the Heavenly Flame. Tang Zheng thought for a while and decided on the name of this new flame. More and more ghost fire and true fire collided, and turned into a new heavenly flame. Li Xiaotian was at a loss. He did not know whether to continue to ignite the new ghost fire or to stop. Tang Zheng was in control of the situation, and immediately noticed her situation. He said in time, "Stop first, don't use the ghost fire." Li Xiaotian heaved a sigh of relief and quickly stopped. He stood quietly at the side, admiring Tang Zheng's every move. When Wuxia heard Tang Zheng's calm and steady tone, it was obvious that everything was under his control. He could not help but feel a little jealous. This kid was too magical. The few of them had their own thoughts, but none of them disturbed Tang Zheng. He continued to do his best, working hard for the final sprint. Combine! Tang Zheng roared, the heavenly flame wrapped around the two balls of essence, and even the war soul sword spirit was wrapped within. Under the tempering of the heavenly flame, a portion of the impurities were refined, and then the two balls of essence moved closer to each other and fused together. Hua! When the two balls of essence fused together, they immediately blossomed with a resplendent light. It was like a sun, illuminating the room. Mo Xie and Li Xiaotian subconsciously closed their eyes. This ball of light was too dazzling. The shock in Mo Xie's heart could be imagined. He had been refining for so many years, but he had never seen such a scene. The light gradually dissipated, and the few of them opened their eyes. They immediately discovered that the two balls of essence had completely fused together, becoming one. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. All that was left was to fuse the War Soul Sword spirit into the essence, and then forge the essence into a sword. He anxiously chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra, the golden kasaya wrapped around the sword spirit, and slowly approached the essence. Qi Yu was suppressed by the Ksitigarbha Sutra, and his consciousness was already blurry. It was as if he had realized that the most dangerous time had arrived, and his consciousness actually woke up. Looking at the scene in front of him, Qi Yu's soul was almost scared out of its wits. He never thought that the situation would become so bad. He had already walked to the edge of the cliff, and if he took another step, he would be smashed into pieces. I don't want to be his sword spirit. I am Qi Yu, the master of the Ninely tribe. How can I become a sword spirit and be controlled by others? Qi Yu was extremely unwilling, and fought back, using the last of his remaining strength to resist the Ksitigarbha Sutra. However, the Ksitigarbha Sutra specialized in dealing with souls. His resistance was like a few pebbles thrown into a lake, unable to create any ripples at all. Ah! At the last moment, he only had time to let out a scream before he was absorbed into the essence. Tang Zheng suddenly frowned. I think I heard a scream. But seeing that Mo Xie and Li Xiaotian didn't have the slightest reaction, he bitterly smiled, thinking that he was too nervous, so he was hearing things. He didn't take it to heart and threw himself into the final task. Now, he had to forge this essence into a sword. He was already familiar with this part of the job, so he easily controlled the heavenly fire to stretch the essence and develop it into the shape of a sword. As time passed, a sword gradually revealed itself. The sword's body was overflowing with light, emitting a powerful and mysterious aura. Especially the aura, it was completely different from the previous Battle Soul Sword and Hidden Profound Sword. Tang Zheng's mouth couldn't help but reveal a smile. The flowers, birds, fishes, insects and all kinds of strange beasts on the 9 revolving pill furnace seemed to come alive, vivid and lifelike. These were all spirits, and the weapon spirit of the 9 revolving pill furnace was hidden among them. Suddenly, one of the spirits flew towards the sword and merged into it. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1475. When a soul entered the sword immediately released a ball of light. When Tang Zheng saw this scene, he was shocked. Previously, when he used the 9 revolving pill furnace to refine treasures, these souls did not enter the treasures. For example, when he refined the Hidden Profound Sword last time, this scene did not occur. What was going on? He could not figure it out and felt confused. He was a refiner, yet he could not figure out what was going on. Others would find it even harder to figure it out. Mo Xie's heart tightened and his eyes opened wide as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. He exclaimed, "How did you do this?" Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. "I also want to know." When the soul enters the sword spirit will become even stronger. Moreover, after the divine weapon is refined, it will bring about an unimaginable change. Mo Xie asserted. Unimaginable change? What would that be? Tang Zheng's heart moved. He knew that Mo Xie would not speak without thinking. He was looking forward to what kind of change this would bring. Whoosh! Another soul was absorbed into the sword, causing the light to become even brighter. Something's wrong. Mo Xie immediately shouted. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat and he also realized that something was wrong. Mo Xie impatiently said, "If it was just a soul, then it would be fine. Looking at this situation, this sword seems to be actively absorbing souls. In other words, it can absorb a lot of souls." Tang Zheng's face sank. He obviously understood what this meant. This meant that all of the souls on the 9 revolving pill furnace could be absorbed into the sword. One of these souls was the 9 revolving pill furnace's spirit. If they were absorbed into the sword, then the 9 revolving pill furnace would be destroyed. Without a spirit, how could a saint weapon be called a saint weapon? Stop! Tang Zheng shouted. A soul flew out from the 9 revolving pill furnace. Just as it was about to enter the sword, It abruptly stopped. Yeah. No one had expected the spirit essence to stop just like that. It had stopped too strangely, too cleanly. That's not right. Why did you stop with just one sentence? Wuxia tilted her head as if she had seen a ghost. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes at him and said, "Why can't it stop when I say so?" Although he said so, he was also muttering in his heart. Why did he stop at such a perfect moment? It was as if everything was really under his control. Could it be a sword spirit? Li Xiaotian said thoughtfully. Sword soul? Tang Zheng and Wuxia felt their eyes light up as they stared at the sword. Could it be that the sword soul is really at work? In other words, the sword spirit is absorbing those souls. This is too ridiculous. He had never heard of an artifact spirit being able to absorb other soul essences, so he quickly looked at Wuxia. Wuxia read his thoughts and shook her head. I've never heard of it either. If an artifact spirit absorbs other spirits, does that mean that the artifact spirit will become stronger? This should be beneficial to the sacred artifact, right? Tang Zheng thought for a while and muttered to himself. That's natural. Wuxia looked at Tang Zheng enviously. If other people want to increase the artifact spirit of their own artifact, it's extremely difficult and almost impossible. But you actually found such a method. I really don't know why you have such good luck. Wuxia had been refining for so many years, but he had never thought of such a method. In other words, he had never thought of such a method. Tang Zheng heard the deep meaning in Wuxia's words and smiled indifferently. It was just luck. This was actually not luck, but because of Qi Yu. Because the sword spirit contained a strand of Qi Yu's soul, it produced such an unimaginable effect. Tang Zheng could already feel that the sword spirit was stronger than before. He knew that this was a good thing for him. As for whether the sword spirit could absorb other soul essences, he could test it out in the future. But right now, he could not continue to absorb the soul essences. Under his control, the soul essences returned to the 9 revolving alchemy furnace and appeared vividly on the walls of the furnace. He focused all his energy on forging a new sword body. Not long after, the sword body was completely forged. It was no different from the previous hidden profound sword. Only the color was different. The 9 Serenity's mysterious iron was completely black, but now the sword's color was black and there were 3 faint colors flowing within. Gold, purple, and blue. He immediately understood that this was the result of the golden Kasaya, true fire, and ghost fire fusing into the sword body, resulting in such a miraculous change. But these 3 colors were hidden within the black of the sword body and were not conspicuous. Lines and lines came out from the sword body and were deeply imprinted on the sword body. Sacred inscriptions. This was the key to why an artifact was a saint artifact. 3 straight sacred inscriptions ran across the sword body, from the hilt to the tip. It was very different from the previous sacred inscriptions. Wuxia's eyes were already fixed on it. His mouth was so wide open that it could fit an entire duck egg. There was a voice in his heart that was shouting in shock. Sacred inscriptions, how can it be so simple? Tang Zheng was very clear that the simplicity of the sacred inscriptions represented the strength of the saint artifact. The great Tao was simple. The simpler the sacred inscriptions, the more powerful the saint artifact. The previous hidden profound sword sacred inscriptions were much simpler. They were straight lines, but there were many of them. It was definitely not the 3 straight lines like now. Tang Zheng was also very surprised. He never thought that the hidden profound sword sacred inscriptions would become so simple. The 3 seemingly simple sacred inscriptions had an indescribable beauty in his eyes. The great Tao was simple, it was indeed so. At this moment, Tang Zheng deeply understood the profoundness of the sacred inscriptions. The simple 3 straight lines seemed to contain the various principles of heaven and earth. The great Tao was simple. This so-called great Tao is the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao emphasizes simplicity. The simpler it is, the greater the profoundness it contains. Simple things instead contain endless changes. This seems contradictory, but it is not contradictory at all. It is precisely because it is the simplest that it can have the most changes. Those things that seem complicated are actually very simple. Thousands of things, as long as there is a clue, it will be clear. On the other hand, simple things make people unable to start and are difficult to figure out. Unknowingly, Tang Zheng looked at the sacred inscriptions and had a deeper understanding of the heavenly Tao. He comprehended even more exquisite principles. This was the extraordinary part of the sacred inscriptions. Li Xiaotian did not understand the difference. He only looked at the 3 sacred inscriptions and felt that it was incomparably beautiful. It was simply more pleasing to the eye than many magnificent things in the world. Tang Zheng stared at the sacred inscriptions and suddenly had a thought. Now there are only 3 sacred inscriptions left. If there is only 1 sacred inscriptions left, wouldn't it be even simpler? This thought was like a key that enlightened him. He instantly understood that the hidden profound sword sacred inscriptions still had room for improvement. Only by turning the sacred inscriptions into one would it be truly simple. At that time, the power of the hidden profound sword sacred inscriptions would truly reach its peak state. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1476. Tang Zheng retracted his gaze from the 3 saint runes and prepared for the final finishing process. His hands crossed and his fingers flipped as he formed a seal and directly slapped the sword. The sword's body emitted a bright light as it overflowed from the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. A sharp aura also gushed out, causing a cold wind to blow from behind. This aura was a sword chi that soared into the air and circled around the ceiling, leaving a bottomless sword mark on the wall. These were just sword marks that naturally flowed out, yet they had such power. One could see the divine might of the hidden mysterious sword. Success! Tang Zheng excitedly shouted. He suddenly stretched out his arm and shouted, "Sword, come!" So, the hidden profound sword soared into the air from the cauldron and flew towards Tang Zheng as fast as lightning. Although the hidden mysterious sword was fast, other eyes would only see a ray of light and it would be extremely difficult to capture its true trajectory. However, Tang Zheng's mind was connected with it and could clearly capture its trajectory. There was a huge difference between the two. Tang Zheng was slightly happy. This was the divine sword that he wanted. Whoosh! As the sword came, the wind blew and directly hit Tang Zheng's body. He was in the middle of it and could clearly feel the uniqueness of the hidden mysterious sword. However, he was as still as a pine tree. Although the wind was blowing outside, he was not affected in the slightest. Mo Xie and Li Xiaotian involuntarily retreated a few steps to avoid the sword chi like wind. They both frowned at the same time. It really is a divine sword. A divine sword. Mo Xie muttered to herself in a daze. Tang Zheng's eyes were like torches as he stared at the hidden mysterious sword that was getting closer and closer. The sword light completely filled his eyes, shining brightly. So, the sound of the sword breaking through the air became louder and louder. The sword was getting closer and closer, but it did not have the slightest intention of stopping. Tang Zheng shivered. What was going on? The hidden mystic sword pierced straight into his heart. Ah! Li Xiaotian screamed. No one would have thought that the hidden mysterious sword would actually pierce Tang Zheng's heart. This was illogical. How could the hidden mysterious sword harm its own master? He had never heard of a magic treasure harming its own owner. Mo Xie's pupils suddenly constricted, but he didn't shout out. His brows were completely knitted together as he sank into deep thought. Suddenly, a bright light burst out from his shrunken pupils. He was suddenly enlightened and could not hide his shock. He muttered to himself as if he was sleep-talking. No, this is not a backlash, but a divine sword entering the body. The divine sword entered his body. These 4 simple words had another layer of meaning. Li Xiaotian was extremely worried and confused. Only Mo Xie seemed to understand, but she was able to see through the mystery. The moment Tang Zheng's body was pierced by the hidden mystic sword, it was as if a spell had been cast on him. He could not move at all. It was as if he could not accept this reality. But in the next second, he found something strange. He didn't feel any pain, and there was no blood flowing out. The hidden sword did not hurt him. However, it had truly disappeared into his chest. At the same time, he found that there was a sword in his chest. This was a shrunken version of the hidden mystic sword. Its sharpness and power did not decrease at all, but its size was smaller. The hidden mystic sword quickly moved down from his heart, following his 8 meridians. It was like blood, unimpeded and unimpeded. When it encountered a narrow area, it immediately became small. It was so small that it was almost hard to detect it with the naked eye. Once it passed through, it quickly became big again. Large and small at will. This was the scene. Tang Zheng was completely shocked by this scene. He stared blankly at the hidden mystic sword's movement, but he had no way to stop it. In the end, he simply gave up resisting. He firmly believed in his heart, "The hidden mystic sword is my own sword. How could it harm me? I should not doubt it. I should choose to believe it." Not long after, the hidden mystic sword arrived in his dantian, in front of Yuanying. Yuanying opened her eyes. Her entire body emitted a purple light that made the hidden mystic sword purple. The hidden mystic sword was like a stream flowing into the sea. Like a fish in water, it let out waves of cheerful sword cries. Yuanying moved. She extended her tender little hand. As if summoned, the hidden mystic sword immediately flew into Yuanying's hand. With the divine sword in hand, Yuanying and the hidden mystic sword seemed to merge into one. The sword qi and light that burst out filled the entire dantian. However, the sharp sword qi did not harm Tang Zheng's body. The two were in harmony. Tang Zheng looked at this scene and was shocked. He did not expect this at all. He did not know what this change meant. He tried to call the sword spirit. Maybe the sword spirit could answer all of this. Sword spirit, master. The sword spirit's voice immediately echoed in his mind. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. The sword spirit responded to him. This meant that the situation was not bad. "Sword spirit, what's going on?" Tang Zheng asked impatiently. "Master, from today onwards, you and I have become one, so I can hide in your body. This way, it will be beneficial to both of us. You can use your flesh and blood to nourish me, and my sword qi will also work on your body. It is equivalent to the sword qi tempering your body at all times, making your body even stronger. My flesh and blood will nourish you, and your sword qi will refine me." Tang Zheng was stunned by these words, but in the next second, he realized the deep meaning behind these words. The sword qi had tempered his body, which meant that his body would become even stronger. Because he had cultivated the primal chaos Vajra mantra, his body was already extremely strong, and had now reached the highest level of the primal chaos Vajra mantra, indestructible. He had an indestructible body, but it was not true that he was immortal. It was just that his body was indestructible, but now that the sword qi could refine his body would be strengthened even further, making it even harder for him to die. He couldn't hide his excitement. "Master's flesh and blood will nourish me. The sword spirit will become even stronger, and my power will also become even greater." The sword spirit spoke endlessly. However, Tang Zheng realized another problem and hurriedly asked, "You can absorb the soul now, and it can also make you stronger, right?" "Yes, this is not only useful to me. Once I absorb enough soul, I can also feed back to you, master. Your Yuanying will also become stronger after being nourished by the soul. It's also useful for Yuanying." Tang Zheng was stunned. Yuanying had always been evolving, but now it seemed that there was still a lot of room for evolution. The soul would probably have an even greater effect on Yuanying. Everything in the world had a spirit, and if there was a spirit there would be a soul. This was the core of everything. For example, humans had souls, animals had souls, and even plants had souls. If the mysterious hidden sword could absorb souls, then everything in the world would be its nourishment. This was truly terrifying. What kind of changes would this bring? Even he himself couldn't guess. But at least this was a piece of good news. As for absorbing souls, he wouldn't recklessly absorb them. If by chance he absorbed a little soul, then it wouldn't be a big deal. "Then when I need you in battle, what will you do?" Tang Zheng asked. The sword spirit said, "As long as master calls for me, I will naturally come out and fight for you." Mysterious hidden sword. "Come out." Tang Zheng immediately acted. As soon as his voice fell, the mysterious hidden sword appeared in his hand, as if it had appeared out of thin air. Moreover, it had already returned to its original size. Others might not know what was going on, but he was very clear. This was the mysterious hidden sword flying out of his Zifu at an extremely fast speed and appeared in his hand. This was not the slightest bit slower than when he summoned the mysterious hidden sword from Sumeru world. Moreover, the mysterious hidden sword could automatically return to his body, so he didn't have to worry about losing it. In the past, the mysterious hidden sword had to be taken into Sumeru world on his own initiative, but now he didn't need to. Feeling the subtle difference, Tang Zheng was overjoyed. Mo Xie and Li Xiaotian saw the mysterious hidden sword appear again, and immediately opened their eyes wide, staring straight at him. Li Xiaotian impatiently asked, Tang Zheng, how did you do it? What is going on? Tang Zheng held the mysterious hidden sword in his hand, and actually had a subtle feeling, as if he and the sword were one. This kind of blood connection was very novel. Hearing Li Xiaotian's question, he raised his head and looked at the two people who were staring at him with curiosity. He slightly smiled and said, "Don't worry, this is a good thing for me. From now on, the mysterious hidden sword can merge into my body. I will use my body to nourish it, and it will use its sword qi to refine my body." Li Xiaotian's mouth was so wide that a duck egg could be stuffed in. He instantly understood, and was so excited that he almost jumped up and cheered, "This is great, you and the mysterious hidden sword can become even more powerful." Tang Zheng smiled and nodded his head. Mo Xie's thoughts were extremely complicated. He understood the meaning of this change even more than Li Xiaotian. He had been refining for so many years, and actually had a lot of experience. He had already slowly fumbled in front of another important door in refining, and that was Tang Zheng's current state. It was equivalent to Tang Zheng using actual actions to prove his guess. This could really be realized, and the magical equipment and the person could really reach a state where they could mutually benefit and nourish each other. Tang Zheng saw that Mo Xie was like a demon, not smiling and not moving at all. He waved his hand in front of him and called out, "Mo Xie, what's wrong with you?" Mo Xie came back to his senses, and looked at Tang Zheng with a particularly complicated gaze. It could no longer be described as simple envy and jealousy. He was sure that Tang Zheng could not merge two divine artifacts into one, because such a thing had never happened before. This kind of pioneering thing would not always succeed, and judging from his experience, the chances of success were very slim. But Tang Zheng stubbornly persisted and succeeded in the end, and also confirmed his guess all along. The feeling in his heart could be imagined. Mo Xie looked at Tang Zheng's eyes, hesitated for a while, and then forced out 3 words, "You win." Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and said, "This is actually all thanks to you. Without those refining techniques and experiences I obtained from you before, I'm afraid I would not have succeeded." These words made Mo Xie feel even more ashamed of his inferiority. His own experiences did not have much use at all. If Tang Zheng really believed in his experience, then he would not have merged the 2 swords. This was because, based on his experience, this was simply impossible. Obviously, Tang Zheng did not completely use his experience. It was better to not have books than to believe in books, and this was the reason. Tang Zheng had his own judgment and opinions. To read a novel without mistakes, please visit Chapter 1477. Mo Xie took the initiative to admit defeat. Tang Zheng calmly accepted it, because this success was indeed commendable. It was the result of his own hard work. Mo Xie stared at the hidden profound sword with shining eyes, asked, "What level is it now?" Tang Zheng's finger brushed the sword body, said, "It's more powerful than before, but to what extent, I don't know." Mo Xie really wanted to blurt out that they should give it a try, but he did not have the confidence now. He was no longer Tang Zheng's opponent. With the fusion of the 2 swords, Tang Zheng's confidence greatly increased. He decided to strike while the iron was hot, and cultivate his own power, so to the 2 of them he said, "You 2 leave first, I will continue to cultivate." Li Xiaotian lightly nodded, and left the room. Mo Xie muttered to himself, thinking back to the scene just now, to understand the profoundness within. Tang Zheng waved his hand, and once again kept Mo Xie into Sumeru world. Although Mo Xie's strength was not as good as Tang Zheng's, but after all, he was still a strong person. If he stayed outside, in case he had other thoughts, then the people in the room would be in danger. He ignored the devastated room and the deep sword marks. All of his attention was focused on himself. He raised the hidden profound sword, carefully thinking back to the man and sword that he created. The sword light in his hand flashed, and he disappeared again, leaving only a sword. The sword light was dazzling like the scorching sun. Not only could the hidden profound sword merge with his body, when he used the man and sword as one, he could also merge with the hidden profound sword. The hidden profound sword hummed incessantly. Whoosh! The hidden profound sword rushed straight to the wall. Immediately, like cutting a piece of tofu, the hidden profound sword easily pierced through the wall, leaving only a small hole. The hidden profound sword soared into the sky, circling above the capital. At this moment, the hidden profound sword's light had already been completely retracted. The ink-black sword body blended into one with the night. It was impossible to detect. Tang Zheng soared above the sky, Looking down at the thousands of lights below, above his head was the vast night sky, the twinkling stars, resonating with the thousands of lights. For the first time in his life, he suddenly had a very different feeling when he looked at the sky at such a close distance. He had stepped on the ground before, so he was most familiar with the feeling of the ground. Now that he had soared into the 9 heavens, the sky seemed to be within reach, just inches away. The image of heaven and earth in his mind became more and more concrete. Whoosh! The man and the sword separated. He stood on the hidden sword and felt the cold wind in the sky. He seemed to have comprehended something. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, a small copper figurine appeared in his mind, and it began to perform sword moves. Taiji Yin Yang swordsmanship. Tang Zheng immediately recognized that this was the last move of the Taiji Yin Yang swordsmanship, which meant that he had yet to learn the later moves. When the small bronze figure finished its demonstration, he immediately recognized it. Moreover, he also learned these moves. Now, he had completely learned the first 4 levels of the Taiji dual form sword art, a total of 24 moves. The Taiji dual form swordsmanship had a total of 6 levels and 36 moves. There were still 2 levels that he had yet to learn. This swordsmanship contained the great Tao of heaven and earth. He suddenly learned so many moves because he had a new understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Just now, he had a feeling when he looked at the heaven and earth, so it was naturally stimulated. The heaven is yang, and the earth is yin. Since the Taiji Yin Yang swordsmanship contains yin and yang in the great Tao of heaven, then yin and yang are in harmony. Only then can the heaven and earth give birth to all things. He muttered to himself, and his eyes glowed with spirit. Heaven and earth unite. Suddenly, he roared. The hidden sword of Xian slashed out and landed on the sky. Then, he slashed down again and merged with the earth. However, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. It disappeared without a trace, without any ripples. In the next second, everything changed. 2 majestic forces flew out from the sky and the earth. They merged beside Tang Zheng, forming a huge yin-yang fish pattern. The yin-yang fish spun non-stop, emitting a terrifying pressure. This was above the 9 heavens, so the ordinary people on the ground did not feel this pressure. However, Tang Zheng was standing beside him and felt it personally. He looked cold and said to himself, "Heaven and earth as one. This is the second swordsmanship that I created." This was a swordsmanship that he created by coincidence. It was similar to the man and sword as one, but their power was different. He looked at the yin-yang fish and pointed with the hidden sword. The yin-yang fish disappeared as if it had never appeared. However, the terrifying pressure did not disappear completely. His eyes became very deep. He said, "The great Tao of heaven is indeed extraordinary and mysterious. It actually helped me learn the Taiji dual form swordsmanship and even helped me create new moves." He seemed to understand why Yan Qingyi became so powerful. The mystery of the great Tao of heaven was indeed difficult to be estimated with common sense. He suppressed his surging emotions. He knew that from now on, he could not ignore the tomes of heaven. The tomes of heaven recorded the great Tao of heaven. He could only comprehend more of the great Tao of heaven by studying the tomes of heaven. Yan Qingyi obtained the inheritance of the great Tao of heaven, and he had the tomes of heaven. It was not impossible for him to pry into the truth of the great Tao of heaven. When that time came, Yan Qingyi would not be the only one who stood out and might not be a threat to him. He focused his attention on the tomes of heaven in his mind again. After studying it for a while, he did not comprehend much new things. It seemed that he had comprehended too much recently and needed time to make a new breakthrough. "I haven't been to Langya Pavilion for a long time. Now that a month has passed, I can go in again." Tang Zheng thought to himself. Now, his Dragon God technique had been cultivated to the 9th level, which was the highest level of the Dragon God technique. There was a little 9-clawed golden dragon in his glabella. It seemed that there was no room for improvement. In fact, Tang Zheng knew very well that the Dragon God technique was only one of the divine abilities of the dragon race. The dragon race had many other divine abilities, and he would not be satisfied with this. Moreover, the 9th level of the Dragon God technique could only allow him to ascend to the 9th level of Langya Pavilion. There were a total of 18 levels in Langya Pavilion, which meant that there were still 9 levels left. The remaining 9 levels of Langya Pavilion were even higher, which could very well mean that there were more treasures of heaven and earth and more profound techniques. Naturally, he would not be willing to stop here. He still wanted to ascend to the remaining 9 levels, but he could not figure out what the conditions were. He simply sat down on the hidden mystic sword and floated in the sky. The hidden mystic sword had a sword spirit, which could protect him completely. No one could hurt him. He activated the Dragon God technique and communicated with the Dragon Seal. He entered Langya Pavilion, and the majestic Langya Pavilion immediately stood in front of him. He was familiar with the way, and in one breath, he climbed to the 8th level of Langya Pavilion and arrived at the staircase of the 9th level. He lifted his foot and stepped on the stairs. The stairs creaked, but did not send him flying. He walked up the stairs and climbed to the 9th level. A gentle white light filled the 9th level, as if a ball of warm sunlight was immediately projected on Tang Zheng's body. However, his eyes widened. He was not attracted by the light, but by the huge object in front of him. He was deeply shocked. With his experience, ordinary things or objects would not be able to make him react like this. One could imagine how extraordinary this thing in front of him was. Dragon bone! He swallowed his saliva and blurted out. This was indeed a dragon bone, but it was a complete dragon bone. Every detail was not missing, and it still maintained the form of a dragon, emitting a terrifying pressure. Why is there a dragon bone here? What's the use of it? Tang Zheng was puzzled. The previous levels were all magic treasures or techniques, but this level was a dragon bone, so what was the use of it? He really wanted to ask the golden dragon, or he should have asked a few more questions when he met the dragon senior in the inverted Langya Pavilion. Now, the other party had merged with his body with the other dragon souls, so he had no place to ask even if he wanted to. He carefully approached the dragon bone step by step, looking left and right, but he could not find any clues. However, the gentle white light emitted by the dragon bone was very intimate, like a spring breeze. He understood that it was because he cultivated the Dragon God technique, which was equivalent to a member of the dragon race. If it was an ordinary person, they would probably be intimidated by the dragon might contained in the white light. The dragon bone must be useful here. I have to study it carefully. He made up his mind and tentatively stretched out his hand, gently touching the dragon bone. When his fingertips touched the dragon bone moved. Was he seeing things? He thought it was his illusion and blinked hard to confirm that he was not seeing things. He could not help but feel a chill in his heart, not knowing what this change meant. The dragon bone began to move, as if it had come to life and possessed life. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of the joints was crisp and clear, but it was like a heavy hammer hitting his heart, making him feel even more uneasy. Tang Zheng held his breath as he made ample preparations to deal with any danger or unforeseen event that might come. In addition, he found that he could not retract his hand. There seemed to be a powerful suction force on the dragon bone, firmly attracting his hand. Before he could think of a way to deal with it, the dragon bone's huge body rushed over, as if it was going to crush him into pieces. He subconsciously reached out to block, but he found that he had missed. The dragon bone pierced through his arm, and an intense pain spread throughout his body. Ah! He could not help but scream, but there was nothing he could do. He could only watch as the dragon bone pierced through his arm, but no blood flowed out. The dragon bone did not come out of his arm again. Instead, it stayed in his arm. As for the other parts of his body, the dragon bone pierced through his skin and fused with his body. Not long after, the dragon bone disappeared. This was because it had completely merged into Tang Zheng's body. How could such a large dragon bone merge into his small body? This question popped up in his mind, but before he could find the answer, he found that dragon scales were gradually covering his body, and his hands and feet had disappeared, turning into dragon claws. He turned his eyes and realized that this was no longer his body. Instead, he had turned into a dragon that was as large as a colossal creature. Although he could transform into a dragon in the past, it was more under the cover of light, not like a real dragon like this. At this moment, he was really a dragon, not a dragon. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1478. Tang Zheng looked at his own changes in disbelief, and thought to himself, could it be that this was the effect of the dragon bone? This was naturally the effect of the dragon bone. He already had the dragon claw and found the dragon vein in Emperor Qin's tomb. At this moment, he had a dragon bone. 81 medium text net dragon claw, dragon vein, and dragon bone. He had all three. He already had the form of a dragon. Now that he had both form and spirit, he was a real dragon. Of course, he was still a human. He was a combination of two races. This was also one of the reasons why the senior dragon chose him back then. Tang Zheng shook his head and wagged his tail, as if he was still not used to his dragon form. However, he had figured out the function of this dragon bone. It was practically tailor-made for him. What would the other dragons encounter when they came to the 9th floor? He turned his head to take a look. The dragon bone had disappeared, which meant that it was only for him. The other dragons might not encounter it. He could not figure it out, so he decided not to investigate further. He could not help but look at the stairs leading to the 10th floor. He could not see the situation on the 10th floor clearly, and he did not have the intention to go up and investigate. Each floor of the Langya Pavilion required a corresponding cultivation level to go up. The 9 floors below corresponded to the 9 levels of the Dragon God technique. He did not know what the 9 floors above were related to. He could only ask the Golden Dragon when he went out. The problem now was how to change from his dragon form to his human form. He could not keep this form forever. Boom! Just as he was thinking hard, a loud sound came from outside the Langya Pavilion. He was shocked. What was going on? Boom! Another loud sound rang out, and the Langya Pavilion shook slightly. He also shook his huge body. He knew that something must have happened outside to make the Langya Pavilion shake. This meant that the situation was definitely not simple. I'll go take a look. He followed the stairs like a fish. He shook his head and tail and flew down. His 9 dragon claws did not touch the ground, but his speed was very fast. After a while, he arrived at the 1st floor. In a flash, he saw a person standing outside the door. This person's hand was shining, and he was preparing a big move. Could it be that he was the one who caused the commotion just now? That must be it. Tang Zheng paused. The other party didn't seem to have expected to see a dragon. He didn't show any fear, but he stared at Tang Zheng with shining eyes, as if he had seen a delicious meal. Ha ha ha, I really didn't expect to meet a dragon soul here. The heavens are really helping me. The other party laughed excitedly, as if he didn't put Tang Zheng in his eyes at all. When Tang Zheng heard the other party's unbridled words, his heart trembled. He suddenly had an ominous premonition. He didn't rush to speak. Instead, he immediately activated the divine ability given to him by the senior of the Dragon Clan. It's a Dragon Slayer. Tang Zheng immediately recognized the other party's identity because he could sense the aura of a Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayers could sense the dragon race, but the ancestors of the dragon race had also developed a divine art to sense the Dragon Slayers, and Tang Zheng had learned it. Thus, the moment he cast the spell, he sensed that the other party was a Dragon Slayer. The Dragon Slayer had actually appeared in the Langya Pavilion. This was a place that only the Dragon Clan could reach. Apart from the Dragon Seal, there was no other way. However, this Dragon Slayer did it. This meant that the senior of the Dragon Clan had been most worried about had become a reality. There were so many dragon souls buried here. Once the Dragon Slayer reached this place, they definitely wouldn't let those dragon souls go. If they absorbed those dragon souls, they would become even more powerful, and it wouldn't be easy to deal with them. The dragon race would have even less hope of taking revenge. However, it was unknown whether this Dragon Slayer was alone or if many people had come to the Langya Pavilion. If he was the only one who knew how to enter the Langya Pavilion, then he definitely couldn't let him leave. If there were other Dragon Slayers who knew, then the Langya Pavilion would be in great danger. Sooner or later, they would lead a large army to the Langya Pavilion, and those dragon souls buried here wouldn't be able to be hidden anymore. No matter what, he had to first control the other party and find out the details. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, Tang Zheng had already thought of everything and made a decision. When the Dragon Slayer saw Tang Zheng, who had transformed into a dragon, he couldn't stop laughing arrogantly. You stupid dragon, surrender obediently, and I can still leave your corpse intact. Roar! Tang Zheng roared, and the dragon's roar was deafening. The Dragon Slayer frowned and said with a murderous aura, You reckless thing, then I'll grant you your wish. After saying that, he suddenly took a step forward, and a light flashed in his hand as he attacked Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was already fully prepared, and was ready to receive the other party's attack. However, he found that the light fiercely hit the entrance of the Langya Pavilion, and was blocked by a flickering golden light screen. There was no way for it to reach him. Boom! Another loud sound rang out, and the Langya pavilion trembled. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that the commotion just now was caused by this. The Langya pavilion was the Dragon Clan's holy land, and only the Dragon Clan could enter. Although the Dragon Slayer had devoured the Dragon's soul, he wasn't part of the Dragon Clan, so he couldn't enter the Langya pavilion, and was blocked by the golden light screen outside the door. Tang Zheng didn't want to see the Langya pavilion suffer any damage. Seeing that the other party was about to launch a second round of attacks, he slashed with his dragon claw, and turned into a golden light, rushing out of the door. His huge dragon claw directly slapped at the enemy's head. The Dragon Slayer slid backward and dodged the attack. He opened up a distance between them and said with a playful smile, "Not bad, you have some strength. This is more interesting. Otherwise, I wouldn't even bother to kill a dragon with no ability." The Dragon Slayer was arrogant, and didn't take Tang Zheng seriously at all. Tang Zheng thought. The other party was just a wisp of soul, and his soul-searching technique didn't work, so it wasn't that easy to force him to tell the truth. Moreover, if he couldn't win, he would definitely retreat from the Langya pavilion in time. In this vast world, it was easier said than done to find the other party. Therefore, it was better to show the enemy weakness first, and see if he could get some information from his arrogant appearance. He made up his mind and didn't rush to make a move. Instead, he pretended to be shocked and asked, "You're the Dragon Slayer, how did you get here?" Hearing Tang Zheng speak, the Dragon Slayer looked at him condescendingly, and didn't rush to make a move. He looked around and said proudly, "This is the Dragon Clan's holy land. It was hidden well in the past, but did you think it could be hidden forever? Haha, let me tell you, no secret of the Dragon Clan can be kept from us forever. Nonsense, other than the Dragon Clan, no one can come here." Tang Zheng said exasperatedly. The Dragon Slayer spread out his hands and said proudly, "Now that the truth is in front of you, what else do you have to say?" "Impossible, absolutely impossible." "Humph, you Dragon Clan are short-sighted. After so many years, you haven't changed at all. Didn't you come here through the Dragon Seal? Let me tell you, as long as I control a Dragon Clan member, then I can come here through his Dragon Seal. Now, do you understand? It was your Dragon Clan that brought me here." The Dragon Slayer was very proud. When Tang Zheng heard this, he frowned and asked doubtfully, "You're saying it was our Dragon Clan that brought you here?" "Nonsense, how could the Dragon Clan bring you here? No Dragon Clan member would do this, because they knew that it would be a disaster for the Dragon Clan." Therefore, Tang Zheng was half believing and half doubting. The Dragon Slayer obviously saw through Tang Zheng's thoughts. Seeing that he doubted his words, the Dragon Slayer would definitely open his eyes, so he started to talk non-stop. The ins and outs of the story were like a vivid picture scroll that slowly unfolded in front of Tang Zheng, making him suddenly see the light. It turned out that the Dragon Slayer was able to come here completely by chance. He was chasing a Dragon Clan member, and at the last moment of life and death, the Dragon Clan member used the Dragon Seal to attack and talk, but unexpectedly, an accident happened. The Dragon Slayer was indeed hit, but his soul miraculously came here through the Dragon Seal. After experiencing this scene, the Dragon Slayer immediately realized that there was a way to reach the Langya Pavilion through this method. The Dragon Slayer was not unfamiliar with Langya Pavilion. After all, they had hunted so many Dragon Clan members, it was impossible that they did not know this little secret. However, they had always lamented their inadequacies in the past, because they did not have the Dragon Seal themselves. Now, a new path was opened, and this Dragon Slayer unintentionally created it. Once he went back and told the other Dragon Slayers, this news would spread like wildfire. From then on, they would not be in a hurry to hunt Dragon Clan members and devour the Dragon Soul, but first capture and control the Dragon Clan members, then use their Dragon Seals. A large number of Dragon Slayers could invade Langya Pavilion. That would be a disaster, a complete nightmare. The expression in Tang Zheng's eyes changed again and again, because he already understood the seriousness of this matter. He had obtained an accurate answer, but this answer made him a little breathless. Looking at Tang Zheng's changing expression, the Dragon Slayer thought that he had scared him, and was extremely proud. He swaggered towards him and said arrogantly, "The Dragon Clan will be completely exterminated very soon, and will no longer exist, so you will die a step earlier. Even if you die a step later, you will still die. There is no meaning in resisting at all." Obediently surrender, and I will leave your corpse intact, and let you die a little more quickly. The expression in Tang Zheng's eyes unknowingly became firm. He raised his head high, exuding an enormous dragon's might, looking down at the dragon slayer from above, and said meaningfully, "You keep saying that you want to exterminate the dragon clan, but let me tell you, that is a fool's dream. You will not succeed at all. The meaning in your words could not be more obvious. Now that you are the only one who knows the way to enter Langya Pavilion, as long as I kill you, then naturally no one else will know about this way, don't you think so?" The dragon slayer was stunned for a moment, then immediately laughed wildly, almost to the point where he could not straighten his back because he thought that this was the biggest joke in the world. It was really too funny. This dragon clan member was actually threatening him, boasting shamelessly that he would kill him. Chapter 1479. The dragon slayer thought that this dragon was extremely stupid and actually dared to speak such arrogant words. 81 Middle. Delta when Web Tang Zheng's huge dragon eyes narrowed slightly. Killing intent surged out, and together with the dragon's power, it swept towards the dragon slayer like a tornado. The dragon slayer snorted angrily. Light shone from his hands, turning into a sky full of brilliant light, attacking Tang Zheng. If Tang Zheng had not left the Langya Pavilion, perhaps he would have to spend a lot of effort to break through the defenses of the Langya Pavilion, but since the other party had recklessly come out, the dragon slayer felt that the other party was courting death, and killing him was a piece of cake. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sound of air being torn apart was loud. The attack arrived in the blink of an eye. Roar! A dragon's roar shook the sky. Even the surrounding air was vibrating violently. Whoosh! The dragon's claws clawed fiercely, and the dragon's tail swept across. Golden light shone brightly as it faced the dragon slayer. Boom boom boom. As soon as the attacks of both sides came into contact, it was as if an intense chemical reaction had occurred. Waves of air that could topple mountains and overturn seas flew in all directions. The shock wave was so powerful that much of the surrounding fog was dispersed by this attack. There had never been an intense battle in this space. Every dragon came here with an extremely sincere attitude. None of them dared to act rashly. However, this battle broke the peace and stirred up the fog, causing it to shatter. The two of them fought more and more fiercely, stirring up the world. Moreover, they were not weak and could be said to be evenly matched. The more the dragon slayer fought, the more fearful he became. He thought that it would be easy to defeat him, but he did not expect his opponent to be so powerful. It was impossible to determine the winner immediately. Tang Zheng did not use all his strength. He was testing the opponent's strength. Because of the previous experience of the dragon slayer, Tang Zheng had some confidence, so he did not panic. Boom boom boom. An intense battle shook the heavens and the earth. As Tang Zheng fought, he moved towards the distance so that he could stay as far away from the Langya Pavilion as possible, so as to avoid affecting the Langya Pavilion. The two of them moved further and further away from Langya Pavilion, deep into the fog. However, the fog was stirred up and the surrounding scenery became clearer. This was a wasteland. There were no other buildings or plants. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he saw a scene. His heart trembled as a strong sense of crisis unexpectedly came over him. The dragon slayer also saw the same scene. His eyes widened in curiosity as he asked, "What is this place?" Tang Zheng recalled that he had accidentally fallen from the ground and ended up in the inverted Langya Pavilion. It must be this place. Now that the fog had been dispersed by the two of them, they could see everything clearly. No, we can't let him discover that Langya Pavilion. Tang Zheng made up his mind and launched a fierce attack. This unusual reaction stunned the dragon slayer for a while, but he soon recovered and laughed thoughtfully. Haha, there must be some secret place down here, right? That's why you have such a big reaction. The heavens are really helping me. Then all the more I have to go and investigate. The dragon slayer left Tang Zheng and quickly rushed towards the cliff. There was no way to fly in this space, so after the dragon slayer rushed off the cliff, he fell in a straight line. Somersault cloud. Tang Zheng roared and a white cloud appeared below him. He couldn't fly with his own strength, but the somersault cloud wasn't restricted. Therefore, after he summoned the somersault cloud, he chased after the dragon slayer on the cloud. The dragon slayer was in mid-air. He heard the sound of the wind and watched as Tang Zheng quickly closed in. He was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. He already knew that there was no way to fly in this place, but he had a way to not fall to his death. However, he didn't expect that the dragon clan's ability to ride on the cloud was not restricted. He could fly freely in mid-air. Comparing the two, his disadvantage was immediately apparent. He was very regretful and knew that he had made a stupid decision. Tang Zheng also noticed this and was overjoyed. The dragon slayer was really courting death. Wasn't this letting him off easy? Somersault cloud, chase after him. At Tang Zheng's command, the somersault cloud whizzed and broke through the air. It caught up with the dragon slayer. Whoosh! A fierce light flew out from the dragon slayer's hand and headed straight for Tang Zheng. It wasn't weak. The somersault cloud had its own consciousness and quickly dodged to the side, avoiding this attack. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the dragon slayer dived into the fog below. Although the fog above had been torn apart by the fierce battle between the two, the fog below was still thick and dense. It was impossible to see anything clearly. Once the dragon slayer entered the fog, he disappeared without a trace. Tang Zheng cursed. With a sweep of his dragon tail, a strong wind tore through the fog. However, he still couldn't find the dragon slayer. He was secretly regretful. He was most familiar with this place, but he didn't plan ahead. It was really a mistake. He also chased after the dragon slayer. There was thick fog in all directions. Where could he find the dragon slayer? He can't fly. Although he can use some mystiques to change his route and make it difficult for me to find him, he will eventually land on the ground. Why don't I just go down and wait for him? I can find him without searching everywhere. Tang Zheng had an idea and came up with a plan. Somersault cloud, go! Whoosh! The somersault cloud flew at its fastest speed. After a while, it hit the hard ground with a bang. He somersaulted in the air and fell from the somersault cloud. He lay on the ground quietly. Behind him was the inverted Langya pavilion. Above him was heavy fog. He was like an experienced hunter waiting for his prey to take the bait. The surroundings were dead silent. Tang Zheng held his breath and curled up into a ball. He tried his best to shrink his body so that he wouldn't be discovered by the dragon slayer. Suddenly, he turned his eyes and looked in a direction. He seemed to feel a weak fluctuation in the air coming from that direction. This fog could hide one's tracks. However, when one was in it, especially when one was moving, the fog would fluctuate a little. This fluctuation was very slight and couldn't escape Tang Zheng's eyes. However, he wasn't in a hurry to make a move. He didn't move at all, so it wouldn't be easy for the dragon slayer to discover him. As expected, the weak fluctuation in the fog was heading in his direction. The better he hid himself, the better he could. Suddenly, he leaped into the air and swept the ground with his dragon tail to support his body. Then, he pounced in the direction of the dragon slayer with his dragon claws. There was a cry of surprise in the fog. Clearly, the dragon slayer was shocked by this sudden attack. Poof! The dragon claws scratched the dragon slayer, making a piercing sound. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. Waiting for the dragon slayer was indeed useful. He actually hit the dragon slayer. This wasn't a simple attack. The dragon slayer definitely wouldn't be able to take it. Ah! A painful groan sounded in the fog. Then, a ray of light flew out from the fog. However, it was swept away by the dragon tail and disappeared completely. This attack stirred up the fog, allowing the two of them to see each other. The dragon slayer was in a sorry state. Although he was hit, there was no blood. After all, he was only a soul. Moreover, this was Langya Pavilion. Their respective treasures couldn't be brought here. Thus, the two of them were completely relying on their own strength. Whoever's soul was stronger would naturally be more powerful. The Ksitigarbha Sutra was a supreme technique for cultivating the soul. Tang Zheng recited the Ksitigarbha Sutra day and night. His soul was tempered thousands of times, and was not weaker than the dragon slayer. Thus, after this attack, the dragon slayer's taste could be imagined. The dragon slayer retreated in panic, trying his best to distance himself from Tang Zheng. However, Tang Zheng definitely wouldn't make the same mistake twice. He wouldn't watch as the dragon slayer disappeared in front of his eyes. He followed like a shadow, attacking with his dragon tail and dragon claws. What is your status in the dragon tribe? Why are you so powerful? The dragon slayer asked anxiously. Tang Zheng didn't want to expose his identity. He sneered and said, Humph, if you want to know my identity, you'll have to defeat me first. Hearing these disdainful words, the dragon slayer was about to go crazy. He thought that he had discovered the dragon tribe's secret after coming to Langya Pavilion, but he didn't expect to encounter this life and death challenge. The battle between the two of them became intense again. It was even a little tragic. The dragon slayer's body was covered in wounds. Although there was no blood, he was still in a very sorry state. The dragon slayer retreated as he fought. Unknowingly, he actually arrived in front of the inverted Langya Pavilion. Ha! His gaze turned, and he saw this building. He was immediately attracted. He wasn't attracted by the building, but by the things inside. Dragon souls. So many dragon souls. The dragon slayer cheered in surprise, his eyes shining. It was really too unexpected. The dragon slayer was born with a keen sense of dragon souls, so even though there was some distance between them, it couldn't stop him from sensing all of this. Why are there so many dragon souls here? He asked subconsciously. Tang Zheng was shocked. He didn't expect the other party to sense the existence of dragon souls from a distance. But on second thought, it wasn't strange. The dragon slayer wanted dragon souls wholeheartedly, so it wasn't strange for him to have a certain sense of dragon souls. It was just that he was a little unhappy to know that there were so many dragon souls. So what if you know there are dragon souls? You can only watch and never think of touching a dragon soul again. Tang Zheng said coldly. He was very clear about the dragon slayer's desire for dragon souls, but he despised it. The dragon slayer licked his lips as if he had seen the most delicious food. He said with a smile, I finally understand. Back then, when we broke into the dragon tribe's dragon tomb, we didn't find many dragon souls. Many dragon souls in the steel forest disappeared. It turns out that the dragon tribe hid them here. It's really a good place. If I didn't come here by chance, I'm afraid I would have to keep hiding. After pausing for a moment, the dragon slayer laughed wildly. Haha, this is the dragon tribe's biggest secret, dragon souls. Once I absorb so many dragon souls, I will become the most powerful dragon slayer. Everyone will have to listen to my orders. The dragon slayer's expression became crazy, looking a little sinister. He glared fiercely at Tang Zheng and said, You are a living dragon soul, it's not so easy for me to deal with you. But these dead dragon souls, haha, they don't have your ability. It's easy for me to absorb them. Wait until I absorb these dragon souls. We'll see who's stronger, you or me. Before his voice fell, the dragon slayer began to use his divine ability. There was immediately movement in the inverted Langya Pavilion. Chapter 1480. The commotion in the inverted Langya Pavilion was quite big, and it immediately attracted Tang Zheng's attention. 81 ohms Chinese network, he cursed inwardly. The dragon slayer must be using his magical powers to try and absorb the dragon soul in the Langya Pavilion. At such a distance, the dragon soul couldn't escape from him. It was clear that the dragon slayer had a unique advantage in this aspect. How could Tang Zheng let him have his way? Moreover, once he absorbed the dragon soul, the dragon slayer would definitely become more powerful. Then, Tang Zheng wouldn't have an easy time. He made a prompt decision and pounced toward the dragon slayer. The dragon slayer was casting spells, so his reaction speed was greatly reduced. Although he hurriedly dodged, he still couldn't escape from Tang Zheng's attack. Bang! With a muffled sound, the dragon tail swept the dragon slayer's back. He staggered and fell to the ground. At this moment, a dragon soul flew out from the door and directly toward the dragon slayer. The dragon slayer was overjoyed and laughed wildly. As long as he absorbed this dragon soul, he would immediately recover and then be able to fight against Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng never expected the dragon slayer to cast spells so quickly. There was no time to block it. However, he couldn't just watch as the dragon soul was absorbed by the dragon slayer. He subconsciously stood in between the dragon slayer and the dragon soul. The dragon soul didn't turn at all and pounced toward Tang Zheng. The dragon soul disappeared into Tang Zheng's body, and his whole body immediately emitted an even more dazzling golden light. Tang Zheng felt that his body had been hit, but he didn't feel any discomfort. Instead, his whole body was filled with energy that spread to every corner of his body. The energy he had expended in the fierce battle just now was immediately replenished. He became energetic again and could still fight for 300 rounds. The dragon slayer looked at this scene in disbelief. The dragon's soul actually disappeared into Tang Zheng's body. He blurted out, "How could this be? Where's the dragon's soul? Where's my dragon's soul?" However, Tang Zheng already understood the reason. By coincidence, the dragon's soul was absorbed by him. He didn't think about absorbing the dragon's soul at all, but the dragon's soul crashed into his body and was naturally absorbed by him. This was a complete accident. However, the dragon slayer didn't think so. He still shouted in horror, "You are a dragon, how can you absorb the dragon's soul?" The dragon's soul was the ancestor of the dragon clan. Everyone in the dragon clan respected the dragon's soul very much. How could they disrespectfully absorb the dragon's soul? The dragon slayer knew this very well, which was why he was so incredulous when he saw Tang Zheng absorb the dragon's soul. Tang Zheng was a member of the dragon clan who had stumbled upon the path of cultivation, so he did not follow those rules. Moreover, that dragon clan senior had taken the initiative to send the dragon's soul into his body. He looked at the dragon slayer in high spirits and said, "Why can't I absorb the dragon's soul? Are you from the dragon race?" Tang Zheng rolled his eyes at him, thinking to himself that I am not a real dragon clan member. The dragon slayer suddenly felt that the situation was extremely thorny. The situation was far more severe than he had imagined. This was a dragon that did not play by the rules. "Dragon slayer, with me here, you can forget about absorbing any of the dragon souls here." Tang Zheng stood in front of the dragon slayer and said resolutely. The dragon slayer's heart dimmed. He understood that Tang Zheng was not scaring him. Since the other party had absorbed a dragon soul, then he could absorb more dragon souls. Tang Zheng's aura was like a rainbow, far surpassing him. What could he use to compete with him? At this moment, the dragon slayer wanted to escape. This place had already become a dangerous place. Every minute he stayed was another minute of danger. However, it was his first time coming to the Langya Pavilion. He didn't know how to leave at all. He didn't even have time to think about this problem. If he left here, then he could tell this news to his companions. This place would definitely not be safe. They would madly attack this place. Looking at his wandering eyes, Tang Zheng guessed that he was definitely planning something bad. He had to cut the Gordian knot. He roared, and the dragon's roar shook the surroundings. Trespassing into the Langya Pavilion, die! Whoosh! He turned into a ray of golden light. The dragon slayer hurriedly retreated, but there was nowhere to run in this flat land. The fog was also scattered, and there was no place to hide. Tang Zheng rushed in and attacked directly in front of him. With a sweep of the dragon's tail, the dragon's claws fell. The 9 dragon claws intertwined to form a large golden net, covering him from head to toe. "Ah!" the dragon slayer screamed. He had no way to resist at all. First, he was swept by the dragon's tail. Then the 9 dragon claws fell on his body. Immediately, the dragon slayer couldn't move. He was completely imprisoned. Even if he used all his strength to try and break free from the dragon claws, it was futile. The golden light emitted by the dragon claws intertwined like a golden shackle, firmly locking him down. "Let me go!" the dragon slayer roared hysterically. He raised his head, his eyes full of ruthlessness. Tang Zheng looked down at him from above and said, "Do you think I will let you go? Who knows how many dragons have died in your hands? Today, I will take revenge for them." "Humph, the dragon race is the natural prey of us dragon slayers. So what if I kill you?" the dragon slayer retorted. "The dragon race is the natural prey?" Tang Zheng clenched his teeth, almost grinding them to pieces. His heart was filled with hatred, and his eyes seemed like they were about to burst into flames. "Then from now on, you dragon slayers are my prey. I will hunt down all the dragon slayers in the world and make you disappear from this world," Tang Zheng said fiercely. "Ha ha ha, arrogant, laughable. A small dragon race, if we really face each other, you are not my opponent at all. How would you have the chance to speak such arrogant words?" The dragon slayer disdainfully said. "You want me to let you go and give you a chance to face each other? Dream on. How could you possibly hide such thoughts from me? You are dead. You won't have the chance. What a pity. You won't have the chance to see me kill you dragon slayers one by one." The dragon slayer stared straight at Tang Zheng. After thinking it over, he realized that the other party was not just trying to win a battle of words, but really had such intentions. The shock in his heart could be imagined. For so many years, the dragon slayer had been hunting the dragon race. How could the dragon race do the opposite and change the roles of both sides? No, it was definitely impossible. Tang Zheng did not want to pay attention to his thoughts, but he also did not want to simply kill him. He had an idea and decided to use this method to punish him. Dragon Slayer, don't you like to absorb dragon souls? Then have you ever thought that one day your soul would be sucked away by someone? Tang Zheng asked with an evil smile. The dragon slayer was stunned. He did not understand what Tang Zheng meant, but as smart as he was, he finally guessed the meaning and his expression changed. He asked in fear, "What are you going to do?" "Of course I am going to absorb your soul." After saying this, small black holes immediately appeared on Tang Zheng's dragon claws. A small black hole appeared on each of the 9 dragon claws and the 9 small black holes pressed against the dragon slayer's body. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.